Yeah, so thanks everyone for joining us. This is a MeWe Awakening panel for energizing body, mind, heart, and soul. We have events throughout the Northwest and many online, as many of you know. The theme today is spiritual bypassing. There are 3 of us on the panel today, Susie, Galactic Ashley, and myself. We will be sharing about ourselves and about the theme of spiritual bypassing, and we'll be available to answer your questions. So I'll post the information in the chat again too. It's free to be here and listen and learn, and then it's $20 to ask a question or $10 for BIPOC. I know Galactic Ashley and I are deeply passionate about spirituality, and Susie is aware of the endless peeling onion as well. And we are excited to learn from each other while we share with you, and we all learn together as a community as we explore this topic. Yeah, there's just so much more we can say. I think of what else I need to say in the beginning. Maybe just keep in mind that this is being recorded and we're going to post this online. So if you want to ask a question, just keep in mind again that it will be on the web. And if you want to do a private session with us instead, our information is going to be in the chat and I'll put it back in just a moment. Yeah, we're just excited to be with you. Thank you for being with us today. Yeah, so practitioners, we can take a little bit of time and share about who we are and what we do. We've got a bunch of time here. So yeah, maybe let's just do a round first. This is the way we used to do it. We haven't done it in a while, of just sharing about who we are and how we practice. And then let's talk about spiritual bypassing, because I think there's just so much more we can say about that. And keep in mind, we have people here that may never have heard about it before. We're going to talk about what it is and where you find it in your life and what you can do when you discover that it's here. Yeah, so let's just talk about who we are and what we offer first. Which of you wants to jump in first?
I can go first this time.
Okay, great.
um, so, hi, I am Galactic Ashley, and I channel divine guidance for star seeds, connecting them to their star families and galactic lineages. I use light language frequencies and work with your cosmic connections to facilitate high frequency healing transmissions and encoded activations. I am a facilitator and I teach. That's Mahana in the background. I am a facilitator and I teach 4 10-week courses called Galactic Guided Intensives. The one that we are in right now, which is still available to register, we will be starting officially. We've only had one session, but it's called Remembering Through Art and Creativity. And a lot of that is really about how to co-create your own quote unquote reality, right? But also through acts of creation. So when we bring in information and we sort of push and allow our soul to express itself through us and we create something in the physical, we kind of understand that we are both the creators and the created ones. So if you're an artist, it can help you. And if you're not an artist but want to access your creativity, it can also help you. So I'm actually really grateful to be on this panel because, galactic, right? Like not of the earth. But I like to remind people that if you were Pleiadian looking at the Terra star, she is also a star nation. So a lot of times people who identify with the term star seed have an innate longing for the stars and may have feelings or experiences that they don't belong here. However, what I believe and why I'm really passionate about the work that I do is that connecting with our galactic lineages offers a lot of opportunities to heal and to integrate with our multidimensional aspects in order to hold divine presence in the present rather than being focused on down here, not being as good as out there. So, oftentimes, when we're longing for home, what's really happening is that we are looking at what it means to actually be separate from source, which is a disillusion. So when we are able to connect with our star families and unite with our star family, we can remember that we are never separate from home and that we're not cosmic orphans. And so I'm glad that there is a galactic on this panel because we're not anti-earth. We're into activating our human divine DNA and bringing our multidimensional selves in through us, to be very present at this time, and it's really, really, really important now more than ever. So thank you.
Great, thank you. All right, Susie.
That was so cool, Galactic Ashley. That's so cool. Thank you. Um, so I'm Susie Parker Goins with Blue Lightning Healing. I am a channel, so I can call through beings of divine, whether it's galactic or multidimensional or spirit guides. I will physicalize them for you so that you can have a face-to-face conversation with them, ask them questions, learn things from them, gain perspectives, um, and then that energy comes through me, and that's all part of the energy healing work that I do, which includes body scans, identifying blockages or blips, as I call them, in your energy field. And you can learn how to identify them on your own and then to resolve them on your own. I'm always hoping to continue to pass on, learn new tools so I can pass them on to clients, to people. As a result, sometimes some of these blips relate to past lives. So I love looking at the at the Akashic records, and identifying past lives that you've had. I can help you identify soul families, so you can see who's been in and out, what sort of soul contracts you have, life purpose contracts, that sort of thing. And we can work together to shift it so that you can live a more satisfying life, a more productive, a more spiritually enhanced life. And let's see, I've got a podcast that I upload to, Blue Lightning Healing Meditations, and I've done some just talking about stuff and then associated meditations. And then I've started to do actual channeling on there. And then the channels will come through and do a meditation for you the following episode. Let's see, just I love it that Lorelei and Galactic Ashley have a deeper knowledge of spiritual bypassing than I do, because I looked at it enough and it seems to me to be like this, I'm better than you are, which I don't feel that. When I learn things or when I go through a session with somebody, I truly admire the work that a client is willing to do. I like the clients who are willing to push up their sleeves and like really go at it. And as my part, I have been sort of that. I have my guide. The guides come through and ask questions to provide perspective. So we look at cracking it all wide open so that you can decide what you want to work on this time, which is going to lead you to greater and deeper healing. Um, yeah, yeah. Got the website, got an email, susiepgoins@gmail.com, and I'm looking forward to learning from everybody tonight. So thanks.
Great. Thanks, Susie. Well, I'm Lorelei Shmayo. So in addition to running the event, I'm also an intuitive eye reader and a body psychology coach. Uh, Within my intuitive eye readings, I believe that eyes are a window to the soul. I think that everybody reads each other's eyes all the time. If you imagine when you've met someone with dark sunglasses and you can't see their eyes, there's so much missing. And as soon as you see their eyes, there's so much that's here. We just immediately pick up so much from each other based on our eyes. And then we're familiar with the phrase eyes are a window to the soul. And I also believe eyes are a window to our soulmates. So I use this work to help people recognize their soul purpose, make choices about their career path, make choices about who they dance and play with at work and in romance. I use it for matchmaking. And I'm also able to look at photos of other people and help you understand people from your past, particularly exes, but also your parents and wounding and all kinds of things like that. And then I'm also a body psychology coach. I've studied with a number of somatic psychotherapists. I believe that our bodies give us information all the time. So part of it is information so that we can be more aware of what we experience right now. But then also, our body is a tool that we can use for helping ourselves get more grounded, get more present, make choices, release what's not of service to us. Our body is such a useful tool in this way. Yeah, it's great. It's all kinds of things. I said that differently than I ever have before, and so it's great learning for me and how I said that. One of the teachers that I studied with, a somatic psychotherapist, is deeply involved in the concept of spiritual bypassing. I'll share more about that in a moment. Um, and it's been really interesting for me too, just as I've grown, because I learned more about that work 10 years ago. And then I've only been in part of the metaphysical community that I've been aware of for maybe 6, 7 years now. And clearly I was practicing before, but I didn't have that context. And um, yeah, I'll share more in a moment. But so I know I've got a ton I can share about spiritual bypassing. Galactic Ashley, you shared a bit. Do you want to jump in and share a bit more about that now, and
No,
then
I actually was hoping that you would start with like the umbrella of what spiritual bypassing is so we could put it into context. That way, when we enter it, we could plug in.
great, great, sure, yeah. So I've got a bunch of different things. So let's see. Um, so one is one of the teachers that I studied with 10 years ago, 11 years ago, is Robert Masters. And maybe here, let me pin myself for a moment so everyone can see. I just saw this book. So spiritual bypassing. So let's see. It's when spirituality disconnects us from what really matters. So that's the way he thinks of this. And I'll give you just a couple of brief examples. Um, so just some very simple, just spirituality can be used to like take us up and out and away from what we don't want to be with. It could be something in our bodies that's hard. It could be something in the environment around us that's hard, in our relationships that's hard, really any context. And we also can use spiritual bypassing as a way of pushing down others and elevating ourselves above something, or pushing down in a way something that's happening for other people that we feel scared about and uncomfortable with. So just some simple examples. If right, I don't like some. Let's say I don't know where my money's coming from. I should say it's so interesting talking about this in a spiritual context and a metaphysical context, because for me this is a super slippery slide of like it's a huge continuum. So there are ways of using spiritual tools that, you know, as Galactic Ashley was referring to, like help us face more deeply and be with what's here. And then, oh, maybe let me back up a little bit. I got to talk about some other things. Let's go for a longer continuum. So if being conscious and present is here in the center, so there would be using spirituality in a way that really is hurtful of ourselves. Gosh, I guess all of them are defined as bypassing. Let me do this differently. So if being present and conscious and doing our best to face what's here and be as authentic as we're able and allowing the energy of spirit through us in the best way we're able, if that's here, one can use spirituality to be blissful and happy and to not be present to a reality that's here. So even just if you look at the environment and the way that we live right now, where we're not caring for our environment and not caring for our earth, we do a version of bypassing and not facing that. You know, when I buy something from the store that's got plastic, I'm not facing the harm that I'm causing. Or, well, that would be more this side. So, well, but if I just like trust that it's all going to be okay and I don't think about it, that would be using bypassing to be in a more positive state. Or it could be that I just try, you know, if I don't have money for my rent and I say, oh, it'll just come. But I'm kind of, you know, I'm not owning some responsibility about that, about me being a manifester also. That would be using it in a way of the positive to avoid. And then a way that it can be used in the negative is, so an example, I have a friend that, you know, had cancer. And, you know, there are so many beliefs about how we cause illness in ourselves. And there are ways that we do and can cause illness in ourselves. However, if you take it to the extreme of, like you say to someone that you meet or a client that comes to you that has an illness, and you say it's your fault, like you were thinking about things the wrong way, or you believed the wrong way, or you don't blah 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 blah, right? So that's pushing someone else down using forms of spirituality, right? So it can be attempting to elevate ourselves in a false way that's blissful, or pushing others or ourselves down using spirituality in a way that both keep us from being present and conscious and authentic, from being with what is, right? From being the best version of humans we're able to be. And this is a continuum that is slippery. And I believe in utilizing the tools of metaphysics and all sorts of things that science does not connect to and does not explain, and the infinite awareness that's here in my being in a body in this life. And it's the tie back here without being anchored or held down by it. And it's this, yeah, it's this dance. And so I think all of us are going to talk about it. That's a bit of the overview. I know that I want to read a little bit of the intro from Robert's book. Should I read that right now? Okay, great. So I'm going to read a little bit of the introduction. And I did a longer, I recorded myself reading the entire introduction. So if you want to catch that, it's in the event on Facebook, and it's also in my newsletter. Okay. So I'm just going to read parts of it. I'm not going to go exactly in order. And again, this is Robert Augustus Masters, so you can find him on the web. And I'll get his website and I'll post it in the chat too. And I'll read it out later. Spiritual bypassing, a term first coined by psychologist John Wellwood in 1984, and I love that it was 1984, is the use of spiritual practices and beliefs to avoid dealing with our painful feelings, unresolved wounds, and developmental needs. It is much more common than we might think, and in fact, is so pervasive as to go largely unnoticed, except in its more obvious extremes. It is a spiritualized strategy, not only for avoiding pain, but also for legitimizing such avoidance, in ways ranging from the blatantly obvious to the extremely subtle. Spiritual bypassing is a very persistent shadow of spirituality, manifesting in many forms, often without being acknowledged as such. Aspects of spiritual bypassing include exaggerated detachment, emotional numbing and repression, overemphasis on the positive, anger phobia, blind or overly tolerant compassion, weak or too porous boundaries, lopsided development, such as cognitive intelligence being far ahead of emotional and moral intelligence, debilitating judgment about one's own negative or shadow side, right? So that's being so harsh on ourselves, devaluation of the personal relative to the spiritual, and delusions of having arrived at a higher level of being. The explosion of interest in spirituality since the mid-1960s, especially Eastern spirituality, has been accompanied by a corresponding interest and immersion in spiritual bypassing, which has, however, not very often been named, let alone viewed as such. It has been easier to frame spiritual bypassing as a religion transcending spiritually advanced practice or perspective, especially in the fast food spirituality epitomized by faddish phenomena like The Secret. Some of the more glaringly facile features, such as drive-through servings of reheated wisdom like, don't take it personally, or whatever bothers you about someone is really only about you, or it's all just an illusion, are available for consumption and parroting by just about anyone. And just notice again, this is such a slippery slope because these are useful and they can be misused, like all kinds of weapons or tools. And I think I have just a little bit more I want to read. Yeah, just another little bit. Most of the time, when we're immersed in spiritual bypassing, we like the light, but not the heat. And when we're caught up in the grosser forms of spiritual bypassing, we'd usually much rather theorize about the frontiers of consciousness than actually go there to the frontiers of consciousness, suppressing the fire rather than breathing it even more alive, espousing the ideal of unconditional love, but not permitting love to show up in its more challenging personal dimensions. To do so would be too hot, too scary, too out of control, bringing things to the surface that we have long disowned or suppressed. But if we really want the light, we cannot afford to flee the heat. As Viktor Frankl said, what gives light must endure burning. And being with the fire's heat doesn't just mean sitting with the difficult stuff in meditation, but also going into it, trekking to its core, facing and entering and getting intimate with whatever is there, however scary or traumatic or sad or raw. And I'll say part of not spiritual bypassing is to go to what might be scary or sad or raw in a way that's gentle and kind and loving with support. If you go into it too hard, too fast, that's also using spiritual bypassing. It's usually using spirituality to hurt rather than to empower. And I also just last month did a 4-week series with Melissa Rankin. She posts a lot on the web about her work, and she's evidently had a lot of negative attention when she's talked about spiritual bypassing. It can upset a lot of people. A lot of people utilize the tools all the time in that way. And in particular, she has applied it to the concept of racism. So in my mind, she is a server talent in her eyes. Server is about love and honor and care of all beings. And she is particularly offended when we, for example, might say, oh, it's all going to be fine, like this isn't happening, or someone else will solve the problems, or someone else will figure it out, or and I know I'm bringing I'm bringing controversy here, but it's like to say like I'm not racist, like it's not about me, I'm not the cause of the problem. But I know I, as a white person, I have privilege, and so she's utilizing spiritual bypassing as a way of wanting to help us all be better people. Yeah. So it's an onion. There are endless layers. None of us ever get this perfectly. It's not what it's about. And I got a great quote from Lissa Rankin too that I'll go get. But that's what I'll say now. And I want to say too that we're all in this learning together, right? So part of what's so important is that we were able to give each other feedback and we're able to help each other see more deeply and in loving and friendly ways be more and more connected to ourselves. All right, great. It's a big opening. Yeah. So Susie or Galactic Ashley, yeah, I see some people appreciating out there. Yeah, and it may be a big topic that many of you have not explored before or have not explored very deeply. Yeah.
I can just talk even for a second about personal experience. So my whole life, basically, I've been like, when am I going to be able to give readings? I mean, that was not the phrase that I was using, right? Um, when, and I was still trying to like go home and all of these things. And even though I was connected to my galactic family and to these galactic energies, they weren't always presenting themselves that way, but the energies were the same. And I know this now because I have like a lifetime's worth of automatic writing that I was doing, and the channeled writing is very much the same. And then when my galactic mother like officially came in, I was like, oh, it was you this whole time, so it's like this beautiful unfolding. But I'm like, why couldn't this all open when I was 18? I mean, it was open, right? But there were some very key things that were left out, and they very, very specifically, the word they used was spiritual escapism. They said you were prone to spiritual escapism. So had I been able to go into like meditative or trance things like that I can do now very easily, at 18 I would have done it to not be present, right? So now it's very much used differently because I got to a vibrational point, or I was grounded enough, pick a term, it doesn't matter, that keeps me here so that I am able to use it for its purpose, right? So there is a divine timing and a divine order to things. But what I think is important about everything that Lorelai says is it is a slippery slope, because sometimes thinking positively benefits you, right? So every decision that we make is fueled by the intention that we have behind it. So if you can't handle something, and it has to do with finances, you can still just put it over here and be aware that you have an issue with that, and sort of address it in a way that's appropriate, without sort of just saying everything's going to be fine, the money will just show up, because that's really common. That's actually one of the more common ones, and is it will just show up, right? But sometimes people say that, but they're doing the work and we don't know. So at the same time, like, we can't be walking around judging people either. And the beings a while ago, they spoke about this, and a while ago they just said, look, discernment is your full-time job. And I was like, okay. And now, like, right, and for like a lot of reasons, like when you're channeling, you should, before you just start channeling, discerning energies is really important. But now more than ever, today, yesterday, this month, we are having friends all of a sudden that don't believe with what we believe in. So our beliefs are sort of up on the chopping block. As they should all, quote unquote, they should always be up on the chopping block. We should always be willing to put our beliefs up and be like, do these serve me? Because it's really important to have belief systems, but also to understand. And I think of these in terms of like those Matryoshka dolls. Like, you're in one and then you get to go into the bigger one because your consciousness is expanding. So those older beliefs no longer serve you. And maybe some people had political beliefs because they grew up in a family that believed that. Or maybe they have political beliefs because they are opposite of what their family believed in. And sometimes as we grow older and we have children, children and things change, we sometimes I've seen people become more conservative and less liberal. So a lot of it is based on personal experience. But what we perceive on the outside oftentimes isn't what's actually going on, and then we tend to have emotional reactions, and I think sometimes that can get us into trouble. And I've gone off topic, but mostly I think the most important thing, and I get to say this because I align with the Galactic so much, is that and this is a lot of the reason why the dragons are also play a very prominent role in all of the work that I do, even though they're a consciousness field and they don't have a body and they don't pretend to have a body. But what we're here to do is to have a body and to have the human experience. So when we have these feelings of strong separation of source, it causes struggle in density, and then we are having human experiences, right? But it's okay, like we don't have to be perfect, right? But we just have to be willing to look. So if there's anybody in here that's like, I want my third eye to open, I promise you that if you ask for truth and clarity to come into your life, your third eye will open, but you also have to be willing to look at yourself with the same clarity that you want to perceive the outside world in. So most people that have blocks in their third eye are blocked because they're not yet fully willing to look at themselves. So for those of you that are, and I used to say there's like only two kinds of artists. There's the ones that have like the huge egos, and then the ones that are self-deprecating. So if you're more of a self-deprecating type of person, you may always be in the shadows, may always be doing shadow work. For you, it might be okay to like find some balance and to like maybe come up and like bring in different kinds of energies, or to stop and celebrate all the shadow work that you've been doing, right? Like, does that make sense? So we're just it's like this. There is the beings also say that they don't give answers, they give guidance, right? Because you're the one that needs to take in the information, not throw the baby out with the bathwater. You choose with your sovereign self on what you're going to do, and more than the choice that you make is the intention that you have behind the choice that you're making. So here's just a really low level example. I was diagnosed with ADHD, or I have a galactic brain, however you want to look at it. If I clean my house because my mother's coming, I get the job done, the house is clean, but my motivation is not in proper alignment, because I should be cleaning the house for other reasons. So I frequently ask, so I will leave that and I will sit with that and I won't like it and I will watch it and I will understand that the ADHD is manifesting, and it's been like a month and that is gross in there. Right? But I don't want it. But there's a part of me that doesn't want to clean it because I know I shouldn't be cleaning it because my mom's coming. I should be cleaning it. And so I have to go like, this is not my shame. This is not my shame. And then I just sort of like started cleaning it the other day, but I have to take physical action. Like I become the magical fairies that clean the house in the middle of the night. Right? So that is that is the thing that I do, but it has to like I ask for purity of motivation, right? Because I also have to understand that there's things in my brain that I also have to understand that makes me upset, which might trigger some kind of response in my brain that's going to then make me do another task. Right? So even looking at our brain patternings, like there's so many things to look at, which makes everything complicated. So I can't say, oh, you got COVID because your vibration lowered, right? And so that's your fault, because there are a bazillions of reasons of why COVID is here, like at a human level, like a collective level, and then on a personal level. And then you don't know what is going on in that person's ancestral system. So we just have to like pause on the judgment and just breathe and just be like, what's really going on here, and where and how am I discerning? And then I need to pass the mic over. Sorry, I'll just keep talking.
Oh, it's great. It's great. And we've just got three of us here today. So I know right, it's a different dynamic.
But it's not a bad thing, Galactic Ashley. You can talk because I'm already learning so much from this. And so what I'm saying, you two have opened up the whole box here and have just given me so much more to think about. What when I did was what I when I think of of spiritual bypassing, it is using spirituality as a means to suppress somebody, to oppress somebody that Lorelai brought up. And so what I'm hearing a lot from y'all, it's like it's about balance. Where it does what you do, how does that balance with everything else? And it is a slippery slope, but I think we can sit there and question everything, but not to the point of that analysis paralysis some people tend to do, like me. And toxic positivity. Um, that's a big problem here. Oh, you're fine, you're great, and completely ignoring what what shadow work needs to be done. Um, my personal experience was that when I got through my cancer treatment, everybody was saying praise God, and I had some people going, and what about those doctors out there? They had the knowledge. So it's keeping it a balance, doing that shadow work, but not saying, oh, look at me, I'm so fabulous because I was so broken and I fixed me. It's not about that. It's about maintaining that balance and questioning the things, questioning what comes through. So using your discernment, um, and applying it. When I do Reiki and any energy work, I know that as I call in the energy, it's going to work on me and then work on the client. So I do get a benefit out of that. I still look at it and go, what is it I need to do? And I'm the first to admit that some issue comes up, and when I first started working with my guides, I kept questioning them to the point where they all just sort of stood in front of me and went, just do it. Oh, for crying out loud, just do the things. You don't have to question everything. So there's a level of trust that's required that you are going where you need to and using it in such a way to elevate your vibration. I'm also a believer in that as I work on my vibrations, I help those around me. But other people have to pitch in too. So that's the big concept that's coming through for me with spiritual bypassing is that you've got to balance your physical with your spiritual or your galactic or your interdimensional, and it's all distilling down here in this experience, even though it's going on all over there, but it's all distilling down and enhancing this earthly experience so that we can help here. I think that's it. I made a lot of notes and I think I did okay, but yeah, just maintain a balance. We're not better than the other, we're not less than the other. Yeah, I need to stop talking now too. Okay.
It's great. We're all kind of like, playing with talking the edges of like, I'm just making that up of like what's here right now, right? We get to an edge of like, okay, we got to breathe and get more embodied to be able to keep talking about this, right? As well as including each other. So I know I want to read Alyssa Rankin's quote, so I put it in the chat. I'll put it in the chat again afterwards. And she said, there was an itty bitty little typo in it, but so she was saying that she's a stand for a new spirituality, and the quote is, "A new spiritual definition, one that is trauma informed, embodied, emotionally intelligent, grounded in science and 3D reality, open to the mystical, in touch with the earth, actively anti-racist and anti-patriarchy, and responsive to social justice issues." So given that this is the MeWe events, I'd say we emphasize the open to the mystical while all those other things are also here. Like, and I personally am a stand more for anti-racism, anti-patriarchy, and responsive to social justice issues. It's yeah, so some of my particular values, and I say um, part of why your experience being here in MeWe events may be a bit different than being in just the broad range of metaphysical type events is that because I bring this awareness, I tend to have this in the field around me, kind of rippling in the field around me. And the practitioners that do well here are the ones that resonate to some extent with this. So we have more practitioners that maybe are more grounded than the average metaphysical event that you might go to. And I mentioned earlier, for those of you that just arrived, Lissa Rankin particularly has a server talent, which is about love and honor and care. And so she's applying this idea of spiritual bypassing to all these issues right now. Part of what's present of our collective and our society in particular is facing these parts of our shadow. So that's why this is up right now. See a few other, say, personal things. So I was a scientist, and I'll say scientist to physics to metaphysics is kind of how I've often thought about it. I, oh, just maybe let me say something about balance first. It's so interesting. So a way that I like a refinement that I make on balance is, does something align, match with my intuition? Does it resonate with my being? When I can be as present as I can get, does something feel in alignment with me? And it doesn't necessarily mean that it matches science. It doesn't mean that it matches all spirituality or metaphysics. In my best awareness of myself, does it feel congruent and in alignment with me? So, like, I might have some sense, some knowing, I believe something, and I feel at ease in my body. I'm breathing. I feel a physical connection to being in my body, and I feel a flowing connection of spirit through me. So when all of that's there, if whatever topic I'm thinking about, whatever belief it is, if I'm able to be in that present state with the instrument of my body and my spirit, that's the best way I know that I'm not spiritual bypassing. So the idea of being like too cognitive or too intellectual, and Robert mentions that, like science for me gets so caught up in a scientific way, and it's too heavy in that, and it's missing so much. Right? And I left the field of science in part for that reason. I mean, uh, there were other reasons I pointed to right then, but it was where science and the way it was practiced was missing so much, and I was very clear about that. And actually, I made reference to some of those things in my earlier intro, like ways science is completely ignoring the environment in their search for truth, and the limited, I'll say now, like just the narrow view in which they hold things. I mean, I know that I was being asked to create science in a way that destroyed the environment, that was too narrowly focused. When I worked at a big ag company, I was asked to make decisions about what science would get funded. That's not independent, objective scientific exploration and what's good for our society. It was about what's good for corporations. Like, so I know how biased that is personally. And at the same time, I could use spirituality and metaphysics to go off into a woo-woo world that doesn't enable me to be the best human I can be, doesn't allow me to create what's good for the community, the best that I'm able to see, again, with, the best, like, in alignment and resonance that I can find. And again, this is the peeling of an onion, right? Get better and better and better. So I haven't looked to see if anyone wants to ask a question yet. We didn't have anyone signed up ahead. And we can keep talking about this in theory too. I think this is of service in a huge way. But if you want to ask the panel a question, it's $20 to ask a question. If you're in the BIPOC community, it's $10. Yeah, doing my part for education and anti-racism. Yeah. And oh, right, someone wants to ask a question. You can ask a question on anything. We clearly have like a broad range of specialties that we will bring to whatever question you ask. And maybe more so than every panel, we'll have more of an eye on spiritual bypassing, to not be spiritual bypassing to the best that we know how. And your question might have something specifically to do with topics that are very relevant to these concepts of spiritual bypassing. So it's optional. We will address anything. And as I was saying, I think since I tend to have practitioners around me that really ground in this, we answer this way all the time. It's just a bit more explicit with our attention right now. And Galactic Ashley and Susie, feel free to jump in. And yeah, we might be ready with our question in just a moment. I need to get myself ready. And I get the person I think is ready. So yeah, if either of you want to say anything else, go ahead. And then, by the way, I'm totally great with getting feedback on what I'm sharing too. And you don't agree with what I'm saying, you see ways of improving it, like, go for it. This is totally like,
You're
that's all.
wrong, Lorelai. This is a panel about being right and wrong, and you are wrong, and I am right.
And I'm blocking, and oh God. Okay.
No, just I want everyone to know, like, I'm in here in the learning with everyone.
Yeah, for about yeah, there was a good start of it. I was like, oh, I'm way over my head. But I'm thinking, wait a minute, I'm using that to suppress myself. So let's know I'm not. So,
Right, we're calling all of ourselves to lean in more, right, and to face our shadows a bit more. All the three of us, and
you
doing.
know, and a lot of what happened, after the election, I thought the same thing, with this, Lissa Raskin's thought is like, oh, I'm not racist. And then I have a lot of friends who are like, here, did you know this and did you know that? And so I have been asking those questions. And I think that's a big part of it, is to ask one's questions, to do that discernment and that checking in. I think it's when we just gloss over it, that's when we get into that, "Oh, no, 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 I'm fine. I don't have to worry about that." And then you realize it's all going to hell in a handbasket. So, yeah, this is a fascinating topic, and I'm gonna have to, like, start looking even deeper. I'm gonna have to start asking myself questions like, "Do I do that?" and all that. So, I think this is great. So, yeah, yay, let's ask questions now.
I don't know, say one person said that they paid it. I'm trying to find where that payment is.
Okay.
Yeah, so you
Th-
can, I just,
I think I was reading an article or by I forgot her name already. LR. Let's call her LR. Lisa Raskin. Is that what you're saying? She was writing about every. She didn't say this. Sorry, I
here,
almost
it's
did it.
Lissa Rankin, Melissa or Lissa Rankin.
Okay.
Rankin.
um, what was she talking about? She was talking about narcissists, and so that triggered this other thought. And I really, really believe, and a lot of the messages that have been coming in, if you were raised by a narcissist, you've been in a lifetime of training, and this is your time because you understand what so if you've been doing the work, blah blah blah, and this is not to make you feel bad if you're like, wait, like there's still trauma, right? Like you can always uncover the narcissist thing, and if you're raised by a narcissist, you might have some narcissistic qualities within you because that's what you grew up around, that you might have normalized that too, right? So that's always something to look at. But my point is, if you were raised by a narcissist, this is your time to shine because you've been fine-tuned to understand when manipulation is happening. And so this is really your time to to ask questions. The beings, a lot of times, we call it soul inquiry. This is time to asked and answered, right? But like to yourself. So when you're reading things, like go beyond what you're reading and sort of really tune into what's happening, because when you have a narcissist around you, they're saying one thing, but your empathy part of you is going off and saying, wait, I'm hearing words, but some other thing is going on in the background, right? And so these are all things that you can feel into. And so this is your world. I mean, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean like this, well, while it's uncomfortable, but it's like you've been fine tuned and had this wonderful lifetime of training for this. It's probably why so many people, I tend to attract a lot of people that have been raised by narcissists, because that was I always, the beings always say, we always say that the shadow work that you are doing or the challenges that you are facing are the doorways to your own ascension, and they will match with your divine blueprint of what you came here to do, right? So usually what you have healed within yourself is part of how you end up healing or help assist empowering others to heal themselves. So I think anybody that identifies with being raised by or surrounded by narcissists, like this is a really good time for you to like shine and be like, I know what's going on. I can sense it or see it even if you don't have the words for it.
Yeah, it's great. Narcissism is a great example because narcissists use all kinds of tools to get us to be confused and not trust ourselves. And then if we go into oh, it's my fault, I did something wrong again, and I'm the one that caused this problem, that's using spiritual bypassing to crush ourselves, right? It's taking too much responsibility, right? So using the
Oh,
idea
nice
of
balance. Okay.
psychology or shadow work in an unhealthy way.
Okay.
There's one other great thing. It floated, it will come back. All right, great. Yeah, I love all of us together, right? So it's a way we realize and are able to share so much more. All right, well, let's see. Robin is ready with a question. And maybe, Robin, you know this, so I'll just say for everyone else too, just a reminder that this is being recorded. It will be online. When you ask a question, if we go deeper than you want us to go, or we talk about a topic you don't want us talking about here, please let us know. We're here to honor you. Please, if you could let the attention stay up on the panel, that would be great. If you have something come through for you, this is a great opportunity to practice your intuition. Maybe write it down so that it doesn't disappear. You can see how much what comes through for you is correlated with what we share. That might be some validation for you that others are tapping into the same thing. And if you have something come through that's different, it may totally be valid. It doesn't mean that just because it didn't come through for us or we didn't say it doesn't mean it's not true.
Right.
Could you please honor the, let's see, if you want to share what came through for you with the person that asked the question, please wait until we finish answering their question. Please write to them first and ask for permission to see if they're willing to hear what came through for you. They may be full after they hear from us, or for any other reason, they may just not want that. Please trust that there's a reason, they're honoring themselves the best they know how, and then trust that it came through for you for some reason and be here with that. And I want to invite you all to learn from all that we've shared, all that is asked, and all that we answer. It's a great opportunity for us to all hold the space together and learn together as a community. Yeah, just an example of the lovely mixture for me of science and metaphysics, or science and all kinds of spirituality, is heart math. You know, heart math has shown that
Yeah. I'm
when
sorry.
oh, it's great when a group of people together are focused on love, focused on some concept that has their heart connect with love, they can affect the heart rhythms of a person over there. Science has no way of understanding what this mechanism is and how it happens. But when we are in a field of love, we impact the heart rhythms of that person. And I believe that by doing this all together as a community, that we all grow more, we all integrate more, we embody more together. So thank you so much for creating this field for all of us together. All right, Robin, we are ready for your question.
I do. I do. I wanted to say one of my experiences with spiritual bypassing, and then I can ask my question if that's okay. So my experience with spiritual bypassing has been realizing that a lot of the religious and spiritual messages I got were really about, like, get rid of that evil part of yourself. God will rescue you by replacing you with spiritual parts. And that was for me a big, when I finally started hearing from my spirit guides, and they were like, no, our plan is not to rescue you from yourself, because you don't need to be rescued from yourself, because all those things that your culture has told you were bad, like your anger and your shame and your rage, those are all good parts of you that can be learned from and can be used constructively. And so it was a huge revelation to me to realize that spirituality didn't mean getting rid of bad parts of me, but rather understanding that even parts that seemed challenging were misunderstood or needed to be integrated or had lessons to teach. And that spirituality isn't rescuing me from me, it's uncovering the true me.
Can I jump in for a quick moment?
Sure.
I remember the other thing I wanted to share is that sometimes the word healing is even controversial. And I like to use the word holing also, right? That it's not that we're healing another or even that we're healing ourselves. It's that we're holing, we're embracing the wholeness of all of who we are. That's very much what you're sharing right now.
Yeah. Okay, but here's my question, if I can get to that. So I very much struggle. I have a lot of childhood messages and things about how I shouldn't be happy and I don't deserve to be happy and being happy is bad. So that's my issue. But when I think about things like, I need to have more positive energy, or, oh, I should enjoy thinking about fairies, or, oh, I want to feel full of God's love or whatever. And then I think, that's so easy for me to think. I have plenty to eat. I have a roof over my head. I'm dry and warm at night. What about people who have so much less than I do? And I feel guilty that somehow I'm like thinking about this, spiritual stuff and just trying to be happier when there's so much racism and there's homelessness and injustice, and there are people who, worry about getting shot on their doorsteps because of stray gunfire in the middle of the night. And so as much as I love this whole idea of spirituality that's trauma informed and is sensitive to social issues and anti-racism and patriarchy, I feel like I personally have a hard time figuring out how do I mean, when I get readings, my people say, oh, you need more fun in your life, you need more joy in your life, but it just doesn't feel appropriate.
And this is a perfect question for this panel. Perfect.
I wanted to ask it.
One of the things I've realized is as I sit here in my home with my family with me, we all get along and all of that. I ask, what is it I can do from here and retain and maintain my safety? I also understand that for my own sanity, I know I can't fix everything. I can't just take like one issue, like, I don't know, saving the horses. I can't fix that. I can't save all the horses because I think it's part of all of our purpose is to share the weight of the responsibilities. So, yeah, there are some people out there who are not taking or who are ignoring their responsibility. And I don't think that's spiritual bypassing on my part because that's a statement of fact. I am also doing my part by whatever donations I can do, whatever. It's beyond setting intentions and lighting a candle and calling it good. There's some real physical things that can be done. And it's as people start to realize that there's been a great awakening over all the current events that have gone on, and people are awake to a whole lot more. Um, and as I got over being overwhelmed by the immensity of all of this, then I could find some footholds, some handholds that I could take so I can do stuff. And it's a variety. It's like investments. You don't just all invest in cryptocurrency. You don't all just do like the market. You have to diversify. So finding those different things you can do because guilt, it's not it may serve you to a point, but it's not the whole thing about it. It's not, I feel guilty about everything I am to where I'm ashamed that my husband has a good job, that it can allow me to build this business like this. It allows me, though, the opportunity to start to look at the different things I can do to support the bigger issues. So beating yourself up is not that is, I don't know if that's using it to suppress. So we're not, that's not going to serve you. Looking at it with a dry eye, with that look of, okay, what can I do to fix this? What can I do to help? I think is my sentiment. We'll say that. That makes sense? Okay.
Yeah, it's great, Susie. Thanks.
I guess I'll say some things.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead. Yeah, you can jump in. Go ahead.
So I love your question, and I think I was in like fourth or fifth grade, and I was like really upset because there were children starving in Somalia, and somebody had thrown their pizza away. And I was like, and I don't know where this came from. I was trying to see if a teacher said this to me, but I don't. But I clearly heard, and then I sort of followed this rule for a rule, right? Who follows rules and what the heck is a rule anyway? But I clearly heard not to minimize, like, don't minimize your own experience, right? Because we're all here having separate experiences, but within a collective, right? So Susie's mentioned that she has had cancer. I have not had cancer, but I've been around. Mahana had cancer. My mother currently has cancer. So I've been around it, but I have not personally experienced it. But there's a huge part of me that acknowledges Susie like on another level and consciously like thank you for having that. Like because maybe because of her, I don't have that experience. So I can support her in a way that I can support her. So part of us not wanting to feel joy, a lot of that is in many ways cultural or the way that we were raised because you cannot have joy unless you have done something to deserve that joy. And so what the beings come in and say a lot, and I will lead experiences sometimes or meditations. I had a whole section in one of my courses where I just connected people to their joy guides, right? So it's not that you are supposed to ignore everything that's going on and to experience joy, but your vibration needs that in certain ways because um yours it's there's a lot of people that have felt tons of shame for experiencing success during COVID times, But if you should feel empowered, you should show like, look, I made freaking lemonade out of lemons, people, because I brought some sugar and I completely like revamped my business or looked at a different thing, and just I was able to shift in my experience of what was happening. And it's not like about you, but here's the thing. So I was in the Peace Corps and I've worked for a lot of nonprofits, right? So those nonprofits, and one of them, I was in Guatemala working with doing documentary arts with children whose parents were garbage pickers, right? That organization does not exist without people that are having jobs and making money. In order to come down to us, we meet with them sometimes and to give us money so that we can do it. So there are multiple layers of things that are going on. It does no good for you to say small, but if you're going to be a millionaire or make plenty of money or donate here and there, then you are participating in being successful, emanating that success, and then sharing your success so that other people can experience it so that they can also be successful. I like a while ago also went through this meditation, and because I was like wanting to be small, and they basically showed me like I was this sunflower that was trying to be like the size of like this little sprout, and I was all, and they're like, look, if you just stand up, all of these things will come to you, and you will like, and I was like, it was like a little it was a weird vision, a little cartoony thing was like picking up all of these ants and bugs and like hucking them over to the tree of life, right? So when you stand tall, people will come to you for you to help empower them, to get to the tree or to get wherever they need to be. Right. And so it's just a part of it is so much ingrained in our culture, and it's part of the old paradigm. Right. So you don't need to feel guilty for doing it. And a lot of this, and I hear my dad sometimes, they're lazy. They don't want it. Like, you have to do this certain amount of really hard work in order to make it happen. I feel like what we need to do is make intentional choices and what the beings call inspirited action. So when we go from a place of being and take conscious and spirited action, we're able to use our physical energy to move things a little bit easier rather than reactionary doing, because we've been trained to just do and do and do and do. So please allow yourself to feel joy. Like if you've had a horrible day and you look up and there's a double rainbow and it makes you happy for a second, it's okay. I get so excited when my possum comes out at 11 o'clock every night. It's like so exciting, and that's fine. Even if it's like a bad day, it's just like, I can have that for a second. You can have that for a second. And understand that when you're experiencing joy, that people around you, their energies are like, they're getting activated on other levels, right? And it has nothing to do with the ego. You don't have to be going, I'm so joyful, what's wrong with you? You just are carrying a joy vibration, which is completely, has no connection to anything that you do. It is an extremely high vibration. I think they've measured it. There's something called the black and white book, Power versus Force. Somehow they've like measured the different one. Like, guilt is way down low. Anger is higher than guilt. Joy is like right up there next to love. It's like it's a huge vibrational shift. So embodying that, it doesn't mean you have to laugh and giggle like a psycho, like, ah, so excited. Like, you don't have to do that. You just have it in your energy field, right? And then that activates people around you. So you're like healing people by not doing a dang thing, but being your authentic self, holding a joy vibration in your energy field. So you're not lording it over anyone. You're not even saying anything. And that's what I think is awesome about that. Okay.
All right, great. My turn. So Robin. So let's see. I'm going to share my screen. Well, which way do I go? I have so many notes. I say, so for me, the big question that you're asking is, what's an integrity? How do I be in integrity as a human? How do I be in integrity as me? Right? The individual human that you are. Right, so I'm going to share my screen briefly. If anyone else wants to share their screen anytime, practitioners, let me know. Just so that everyone else has context. Right, so these are 7 talents that I look at in people's eyes. And Robin, I'm sure we've talked about this before, but I can't remember which parts and what we've talked about. And I'm not so close to you right now, but the 3 talents that I think that you've got are scholar. It's about knowledge. It's about absorbing information to build knowledge and share knowledge. And then priest, priestess is about inspiration, vision, passion, motivation, integrity. They're bothered by avoiding the truth, avoiding the emotional truth. Scholar is bothered by avoiding the content, intellectual truth. They're bothered by missing and wrong information. And then I think you also have artisan, which is about freedom, creativity, pleasure, and energy. They're about exploring what's new and bringing new ideas and new experiences into everyone. They're bothered by what's ordinary or boring. Does that make sense to you? Okay, great. And so what's really important here is that what's an integrity to you has to do with the expression of these three and the greatest way that you can be of service as you with this soul in this body. And the priest, priestess in particular, when it's the first talent in a sequence, it gets directed outwards and it wants to make like the biggest difference it can for the most. And when it's second, the tendency is that it wants to be good on its impact, but it tends to direct a lot of the energy inside and says, I need to grow, I need to be better, I need to do more. So of that list from our masters, with pre-second, you're going to have the tendency to look at yourself and look at what you're not doing and hold yourself to this high standard of having to be perfect. So the risk for you in spiritual bypassing will be that you're too hard on yourself and it keeps you from actually making the biggest difference towards what you value. Just for completion, when priest is third, it goes outwards again, but it's narrow. This is the right way. This is what it should be. Priest, priestess. So saying more about you specifically. So I personally think that, we each have 3 talents. People can be doubles, but we all have 3. And it's integrating them together is the way that we make the biggest contribution, the way we are the most of service. So for me, the opportunity here for you is that you're sharing scholar, priest, priestess, and artisan that makes the biggest difference in the world. So practically, what you're... so I think that if you're with priest, priestess being second, the big opportunity is to give yourself all the opportunities, see yourself as positively and optimistically as you see others, right? So the good that you see in others, the way that you might be able to discern and like they could do more, but that you trust in some way, I believe, that they're doing the best they know how in the moment. That can be used as a spiritual bypass. But if you hold a more optimistic view of others and you don't judge them as harshly as you judge yourself, this is an opportunity for you to grow in your priest, priestess lessons. And so this is a way that you're out of integrity and you're not able to be the most of service about these topics. Are you seeing how I'm directing it specifically to these topics? Is that just right there? I know I haven't gotten so specific, but like if you think that, maybe give an example. If you have some food and if a friend that you know over there has some food, if you think, oh, I should give my food, someone else is hungry, but you don't think this about your friend, oh, my friend should give their food, someone else is hungry, you're being harder on you than you're being on them. So just some of your own personal lesson is to have that be more congruent. I think that maybe let me share again really briefly. I'm imagining that you probably have a parent that had priest, priestess as their first talent, which wanted to make a big impact all the way out there, a parent or a grandparent or someone. So you might feel some pressure to do that. But I think a bigger thing is you probably have a server mask, meaning that growing up, you had to act like a server. And a server mask taken to an extreme is like, oh, I have to help you and I have to help you and I have to help you and I have to help everybody. And the big lesson about server is to love and honor and care for oneself. So in addition to having priest, priestess second, that you have to be good and holding yourself to a higher standard than others, you probably have some lessons with that you have to do for others and have to take care for others. And that probably was a survival strategy as a child. So part of being the highest energy and the most able to be of service in who you are is to let that go. It doesn't mean you don't help others, but you do it in a way that's most authentic to you. So I believe that our souls are unique in their various ways, right? And I use the simplification of these archetypes to help us understand them. But so when we share what's most natural in us, we feel more energy. We're energized by being of service, which allows us to give more and be more of service. So I would look, Robin, there's specific examples of how you might want to support others and help others. But then also, how are you not expressing your scholar? How are you not expressing your priest, priestess, and your artisan in a way that keeps you from being the most of service? So scholar wants to learn and teach and educate others. So what are ways that you might hold yourself back and say, oh, I'm not ready to do that. I don't have a message to share. I'm too scared to do that thing. Right? So that might be the opportunities for you to, in a loving way, right, with support, be with those fears so that you can do more, trusting your own knowing, let yourself learn more, and be able to share and educate. For priest priestess, it is about integrity. Priest priestess often creates a call for others to line up, to get into integrity, to face. There may be ways that you want to share your message in a bigger way that has to do with knowledge and also, right, creativity. And but there's a priest priestess, again, there's this the highest form is a trusting the process. It's facing, it's calling in. It's calling out, but calling in. And there's a spaciousness at the same time. So it's realizing and choosing who's ready to hear. So if you are educating and you are sharing, are you letting yourself choose the best people in the best places where people can hear your message the most? And then artisan, probably your priestess second has the biggest struggle with the part of you that's artisan. One of artisan's lessons is sensual pleasure. So they really are about pleasure. And it's by, and I'll say Galactic Ashley, can I use you as an example? Galactic Ashley to me has a ton of artisan too, right? So artisan can get totally distracted by all these things, but it's by being so aware of all these things is how they notice, oh, this is the thing, oh, this is even better, right? So that's how they realize and bring in, right, all of these things. So it's about pleasure in some sense, but and in the unhealthy way, it can be more gluttonous with pleasure. But in the healthy way, it really is, it's so discerning and noticing, right? And bringing in those sublime experiences. And pleasure can be the energy in nature with your feet on the ground, right? And the awareness of the fields, of the field of the energies around you of nature. That's a sublime artisan experience that we all can connect to, right? And so part of your gifts are bringing in whatever your equivalent of that is, right? Helping create that field for others. It doesn't, and then I also wanted to speak to, I think that there's, how did I write it? I know I'm saying a whole lot here. There's a, I don't know where I put it, but there's individual choices, like what I individually might do, and then there's the impact I might make in a larger way in society. And depending on who we are and what our soul is, our way of making a bigger impact may be on the collective and the larger community approach to something, and it may be personal choices, and I think both are important. Your energy system is a bit in between. And I think that in general, like walking our talk is a good thing. Like if we don't walk our talk enough, that's spiritual bypassing on its own. Yeah, I said individual choices, educating ourselves and others, in particular educating because you have scholar, and then how do we change the system? And there's some awareness on all those things. And I post on Facebook on my wall. Like that's a way that I read the news and I'm educating people. And some people read it, some people don't. I'm sure I offend a bunch of people, and right, who pays attention to me changes. Yeah, so just different ways that we share a voice. I have these panels, right? It's a way of educating. So for you personally, looking at what you're not doing that is the most authentic thing for you, the thing that energizes you, not makes you feel tight or exhausted, but what are the things that energize you? And how can you do more of those things? And, artisan is about joy and pleasure and aliveness. And the map I use for feelings, that there are 5 feelings. It's a simple version like primary colors. And I think that it's important to be able to feel all of them. Joy, sadness, that's a loss. Fear, which is a real or imagined threat. And it's not good to get caught in fear, but to be able to feel fear is healthy. And then anger, we talked here already about how anger is healthy. For me, that's yes and no. And then sexual aliveness. And artisan is particularly good at sexual aliveness. Priestess can use anger in a good way and in too harsh a way. Priestess use artisan use joy. Priestess can use joy. I mean, but really all of them. It's good for everybody to be able to feel all 5 of these. And I think that if we make any of them wrong and we push any of them down, we're keeping ourselves from being a full flowing instrument. And so there can be getting lost in joy as a way of avoiding. And if we can't feel enough joy, and we might be suppressing and not allowing the energy that fuels us to allow us to continue to give our gift. It's subtle. And I just want to say one other little thing about guilt. So Robert Masters has great books that talk about different kinds of emotions and the linking them together. And I believe for guilt, he says that well, the difference between toxic shame and healthy shame. Toxic shame is where we pull ourselves down and crumble, and healthy shame is where we're like, oh, there's something for me to face here. I didn't do this well. I wish I'd done this differently, and I'm going to step in to do it better. Right? So toxic shame brings ourselves down, and healthy shame helps us all step up. And guilt is a part of the toxic shame. It's when something happens that's wrong, and guilt is toxic shame of pushing ourselves down. And it's a way that I'm not saying you're doing this. This is an invitation to look. The idea is that with this toxic shame, with guilt, we can, oh, I've suffered enough. I can wipe the slate clean and I can go do it again. And so the example he gives is someone, and this is extreme. I'm not saying you're doing this, but for someone that's abusive of someone else, if they feel guilty long enough, it's an excuse then they've suffered and they can go in and abuse that person again. And so guilt he finds to not be a healthy emotion in that way. So I encourage you to use the energy that you feel about this to feel some of maybe the healthier shame of, oh, I know there's some different choices I want to make, but to do it in a way that there may be local choices you make about the money that you have and how you spend it or how you invest it or the things you buy. But it may also be somehow sharing your gifts, right, in a way that's so authentic and true to who you are and that's energizing to you. Not pushing yourself out so much further than you feel comfortable with now, but leaning into your edges. There's a long answer. There's a lot of my philosophy all in there. Galactic Ashley, Susie, you want to share anything else? Yeah, and Robin, thank you so much for asking. Yeah, go ahead, Galactic Ashley or Susie, if you want to share something else too, or if Robin, you want to jump in and share.
I was just going to thank you guys for all your answers and appreciate your answer for me, but also just in general, all the work that you guys do to put these amazing panels on.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm curious if you're comfortable to share, is there anything that I shared about you giving your gift? Is there anything that you see for you of a way that you've held yourself back, a way that you could do more? Again, not shooting yourself that you need to grow so much, but like where you're misdirecting on wanting to help others as opposed to letting you really shine.
So certainly much of what you said definitely resonated with me, but I have this problem where because I have, and the idea of having a server mass where there was a parent in my case that said, you should be out there helping people. This isn't about you. You should push yourself to be what other people need. That was totally true for me. And so I struggle when I have this impulse to like help, because a lot of times I do help and then I end up feeling really a lot of emotions afterwards, or I feel physical pain as a result. Or I struggle with, did I say the right thing? What if I hurt somebody? And so I have this desire to help and then I jump in and do it. And then I feel really terrible afterwards. And so I can't tell whether this is a, yes, you should be helping people. It's good for you to help others and speak your truth. Or if it's my internal self saying, you don't feel like you should have to save everybody. If you feel like you don't want to say anything, like, am I doing this in a way that's hurting myself? Or am I supporting myself by actually speaking up? So for example, I thought about volunteering as a practitioner for today's panel because I've been a life coach for 20 years and I can talk a ton about spiritual bypassing and I have all kinds of good things to say and I do readings for people all the time. And I thought, well, let me offer, if Lorelei needs an extra practitioner, I could join, I could be a practitioner. And then I was like, yeah, but then you're going to be like, well, maybe I did a bad thing. Maybe I'm not ready. Lorelei has plenty of people. She doesn't really even need you. Don't put pressure on yourself. Just go and listen. And so I decided not to volunteer. And so I just wasn't sure. I struggle with knowing which direction to go in.
Yeah, this is great. Thank you so much for sharing more.
So I just want to mention that I have a trauma background. And because of that, it doesn't feel safe physically to be happy or to think good things about myself, because I have this vision of this evil man coming along and telling me that I don't deserve it and I'm a horrible person and I'm hurting others. And so cognitively, I wish I could go out and speak and give and help. But practically, when I do it, I have all these trauma symptoms. It makes me very, very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
If I may, Robin, I would encourage you to try this. There is that feeling of, am I worth it? And what I see is that we don't know until we try. And if you really stink at it, well, then you'll know. But if you're really awesome at it, you would have gotten an opportunity to let us see it. And that's that value, that self-value struggle is something I think that is tied in with the whole bypassing thing. The shoulds, my guides are just telling me shoulds are the death of creativity. You should do it this way. But what about that way? And what about that way? So I would encourage you, that would be my request of you, is to see you on one of these panels or on any panel, or just play with it. I think that's what we've gotten to at this point, is that we have, oh my gosh, I really have been listening. We are finding the joy in doing this. you know and it, because for a while I was thinking, oh, I have to be so serious, and then I forget to turn on my mic, I forget to turn it off, and it's being that balance of humanity here that um allows me to understand, it's like, I have been doing some work and I have been looking at this, and to be able to encourage others to do the same. I'm very emotional about this right now. And I think whatever we can do to help each other, whether it is through money or time or doing the things or speaking out, whatever it is we can do, this is what we're called to do. And I think that's where spiritual bypassing can get in the way. Am I doing enough, or am I doing right? So if we would just, I am definitely one of those, just get in there and do it. I'm not always graceful about it, but it's certainly a lot of fun and we enjoy it. So I think that's how we can, is that a thing, to bypass our spiritual bypassing? That's not a thing. But to work through, but to help us work through it. And because you don't know until you try. So thank you. Thanks for sharing.
So I want to say, Susie, just as a comment of that, we could certainly like bliss out and then really shame ourselves for blissing out, and we could bounce back and forth like from different parts of bypassing. So yeah.
But in that part of it, it's like, it's figuring it out. I don't think we can balance, even if you're trying to balance on something physically, you're like, woo, 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 going back and forth, and to maintain a steady thing. Well, that isn't that called flatlining, and then that means you're dead. And it's like, so you've got to have those adjustments you have to make in life. So yeah, it's not just a slippery slope. It's one of those balance boards where you're going, whoa. So it's not boring. That's for sure.
Yeah. Galactic Ashley, did you want to say more? I know I want to say more too. Go ahead if you.
All I was gonna say is that if you ever did a panel with us, nobody's gonna let you fail. So it's like, even if you said something really goofy, nobody's gonna be, I mean, I feel like we all sort of come in and say, well, maybe Susie was trying to say blah 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 blah. You know what I mean? So do I vote to do a panel? And I feel like Lorelai could probably comment better on when you have experienced trauma and then your body is experiencing that trauma again, even though you're trying to come out. So I will let her say something about that versus me. Not that I haven't experienced trauma, but for some reason my body doesn't process it in the same way that other. It's not a better thing. I just.
Just different. Yeah. Yeah. So Robin, with what you shared, so before you shared that you had a parent that was so harsh and judging, that's one place I was going to wander. Let's talk about the server and the mask. And so for you growing up, agreeing to go ahead and focus on everyone else, the parent or parents that required so much attention, and everyone else too, like that so was a survival strategy. If you had not done that, you wouldn't be here. Right. I know, like as a coach, right, and the trauma work that you've done and the study that you've done, right? So for me, whenever that comes up, it's just coming back to, oh yeah, this is like this little part of me that is terrified. If I don't do this, if I don't worry about those other people, if I don't get caught in that right now, I won't make it. And so that little part of me, right, is the part that's so gets caught in that. So for me, the opportunity is to love that part of me right then. It doesn't mean I won't make any choices to support others, but how can I get into my aliveness before I choose, before I know, before I let, maybe say, one of my teachers would talk about choicelessness, like that there isn't a choice. We have the facade of choice, that like the choice, the energy of the universe comes through us and we know. So for me, that's a version of like what's in alignment with me, with all of me. And I say in that you have the priestess second, and you tend to judge more internally. That you had a parent that was so judging, also like, oh, it just makes the lesson so much harder. And again, so just knowing the little parts of you, right, that are here that can get scared. I don't remember if you've seen any of my fear melters and fear antidotes, but those are some things that I use for helping get more reconnected in your body, right, to being with you now, and to loving that little one. And what did I write? Oh yeah, yeah. Um, I, I, I I love knowing these things about you that I didn't know before. That you're a coach and that you do readings. You do versions of readings already. I've always had space at my fairs in person where some new practitioners can get a start. I often, I don't publicize this, but I'm publicizing it right now. I often used to let practitioners not pay for their booth immediately. If I had space, I'd pay ahead. I'd let them wait and earn some money first and get some experience having a booth. And, some of them never paid me for those days. They didn't earn money, but they got experience and they learned how to do it so that they could get set up and they could earn. And for me, it's the whole thing is, it's this whole topic, willingness, is so important. And it's like willingness to let aliveness flow through us, whatever direction, like we play with this. Like I'm willing to discover what my gifts are. I'm willing to explore and discover if this is how I am to be of service. I'm willing to have this be easy on me. Right? It's all kinds of things. Willingness is such the key for me. And I think that being in one of my fairs is an easier way to start because there are so many practitioners, right? One never has to share on the intuitive panel. One can share very briefly, and then one has a private room, breakout room now with space where you can choose to give a talk on something that and a few people come. You can have easy, casual conversation. I think in some ways, being on one of these panels where right now there are only 3 of us, but so often we have more, there's more of being in front, right? It's more hours and it's not as diluted with as many practitioners. So I totally encourage you if you want to jump in on a panel, and like starting at a fair can be an easier way to get a start. And yeah, I think Robin, you landed on exactly some of the ways that you hold yourself back. That focusing on the other people is a way that you avoid actually living your purpose. And I know that you're already living a bunch of your purpose, but like reaching even more people and refining your gift more. Expanding to what your gift might be. Yeah. So whenever it comes up in the worry about other people, there might be some small steps that you can take about that, not necessarily the huge leap, but what's a small step right now? And how can you take a step for you? Right? It might be like writing up, if you were to share, what you would share or what a talk might be, or yeah, all kinds of things. So thanks for such a great question. And I know she's posting in here. So I like my assistant Anissa is also priestess second. She's artisan priestess scholar. And she was just writing some ways that the sharing's been of service to her too, and I'm sure for others. So thank you so much, Robin. Yeah. Maybe Anissa, if you're okay with it, maybe you could come on and you could read out the words that you wrote in that post. I just think it's a lovely wording of it. I could read it too. It'd be great if you wanted to come on and read it. Are you going to do it? Where is she? Is she still here? Maybe she got off.
She says she's getting her mic.
Oh, great. Yeah, she's getting her mic. Cool.
Getting her mic out so she can drop it.
Yeah, it's the I never really thought. Yeah, line.
Hello,
Right.
can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, so this is so awkward. All I said was, I never really thought about how we cheat others out of joy by holding ourselves down, by taming our joy, having guilt when we aren't allowing our love, joy, and energy to positively affect others. So thank you for helping me think about this in a different way. of something outside of myself, but so much inside of myself at the same time. So thank
Right,
you.
for our own internal journey, right? It's so connected to being of service to others. Yeah, thanks. And that reminds me too, if I say anything else, Robin, just about the trauma, right? So I've got trauma I clearly know about. I'm still leaning into recognizing that my grandmother must be on the narcissistic continuum in a big way. And yeah, just so much. Some I know and some I kind of know. And I had to go to like work with it that's what's here. So I'm not bypassing myself. And I think being gentle, small steps are important. All the somatic practices of just leaning a little bit into something, remembering something, and so connecting with our bodies. I don't know if you're a somatic practitioner, but all the different somatic practices, like psychotherapy type practices, super helpful. Yeah, and that it's just being okay with that we are where we are. And I love what Susie's saying about it's like a balance board. I think life is a balance board. All these things definitely a balance board, and it's leaning into our growth edge and being really aware of like staying connected to ourselves and like leaning and staying connected. And it's a dance, and it's like peeling an onion of it. It never has to be fully peeled. There are always layers. So not getting caught in hopelessness that we'll never get there, and not striving, attaching to the goal, is knowing that it's a journey. I know it's a long answer, but I think there's tons and tons of gifts in there. So thanks so much for your question. Yeah. We don't have anyone else chomping at the bit to ask a question, as far as I know. So,
Okay, I got something.
oh, great.
Not a question, but
Yeah, yeah.
I did want to talk about empaths. I don't know, it got triggered somewhere in all of that. So, and this was this sort of awareness that came up at some point, whenever that point was. A lot of times, especially when we're wearing, oh, the server mask, that's what it was, is I in many ways was the emotional processor, calmer, whatever in my family. um and I remember, like, when I was going through school and just at in rooms, like, I'm like the moth to the flame, right? So I'm like, where, which one of these things doesn't belong? Like, energetically, I'm just like, whoever's having the problem, it's like where a lot of other empaths would be like, I'm just gonna focus. I've heard them say that when they were in school, they would focus on like the calm person, and then sort of like ignore everything else. So I'm not saying one of these is better than the other, right? But then I had to look at that and I had to go, oh my goodness, I wasn't really helping the energy. Like, because we can say that we're helping people because we can feel it and the energy's off and we want to help someone. But really, what I'm doing is I am helping somebody because the energy is off and I need it to like be calm, and we all just need to be cool, right? So there was parts of me, and this was before I even knew what empath was, right? But now I try and be aware of that, because what is really holding space, right? We're holding space for people to express their emotions, to do what they need to do. So as we grow up in empathy, so really I had to look back at my teenage self or whatever and be like, I was trying to quote unquote fix people because I was uncomfortable, right? So I'm not really fixing them. I'm fixing the situation so that I feel comfortable. And that was like, oh my goodness, now what am I doing right now? Am I doing the same thing? Because we have to, like, what does it mean to hold space? Sometimes that means, and this goes back to what Lorelai was saying about the holding someone. Like, nobody's broken, right? But we have things that we need to come to terms with. There's a work and things that we need to do. And nobody needs to be fixed, but they can be empowered to do their work. But we're really just like, it's just this I don't know, the space goes out and just goes so that somebody feels safe to have an adult-sized tantrum, and then you just sit there until they like sort of come back, and then we're all here and we're like, okay. But sometimes you don't need to say anything or do anything. And so for me, on my empathy journey, I also recognizing that I just, whatever, I'm just wired differently, and that's just what it is. Because a lot of empaths use empathy. I understand feeling everything all at once, or when things are happening, or you feel bad because you can't separate your energy out. I mean, there's a lot of things that we have to pay attention to, right? But then this all comes back to, where is your motivation and where is your intention coming from when you're trying to help someone else? And that could really be shining a light on something else that might actually have to do with you. And I don't think that any of us at any time are I'm not saying I'm free from this, right? But these are all, the soul inquiry and the question asking and asking ourselves why we're doing it. I think it's fascinating. Really, I feel like it's interesting and fascinating to do that. And so when I first started doing readings, and the guidance that came through is it doesn't have anything to do with you, which to me was a huge relief, right? Because I was like, oh, it doesn't, like, I just say what I'm getting, right? To a degree. And so it's just, all of it's fascinating. Is what is our motivation? Why am I helping? Because let's say we come from a really wounded background. We could be helping because we want somebody to say how amazing we are because we just helped them. Like, so these are all like really important things to be aware of, and where our motives as empaths. And then sometimes empaths want to shut themselves in, and then you have the whole introverted and extroverted thing. So that's all. I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, it's great. Well, does anyone else want to ask us a question? I'll put the link in the chat again. Oh, Robin had a comment in here too. Maybe we could talk about some of the signs of spiritual bypassing. How can we recognize when we're doing it, especially if it sneaks up on us? Yeah. Oh, goodness. Well, I know for me,
Yeah, I can.
Go ahead, Susie. Go ahead.
I'm okay. For me, it's the ham-fisted ones that I'm seeing that really bother me, and then which gives me that motivation to go and look deeper. So anyone who says that based on some book they have in hand that they are better than someone else, or if they go to a particular building or have a particular spiritual practice, that they are better than someone else. And then that leads me down that path of, well, where else does that happen? Sneaking up spiritual bypassing, I think that requires a lot of awareness on your own part. Um, and and then you're like, okay, where's that person coming from? And not turning it around to say, well, you're spiritually bypassing, because that old adage, it's like when you point one finger, you have three fingers pointing back at you, because you can turn it back around on yourself. So yeah, spiritual bypassing, I can just see it just kind of lurking around and sneaking up on you. But that's when you turn a light on it and go, okay, I see you for what it is, and this is how I'm doing it. Someone was talking about, Galactic Ashley was talking about what's your motivation for helping somebody. And I've experienced that. I took a class, we came out into a general room, and we were all very hyped by it. And this one guy came along and put on calming music because it was too much for him. He was fixing us because he couldn't handle it. He didn't talk about it. He didn't bring it up. He just thought he could be superior to us and chill us out on his own. So it's that abuse of power that is, it's one end. It's one edge of the spectrum of spiritual bypassing. And then it goes all the way to the other end, and to I'm not good enough. And so when I work with clients, I do talk to them about using language that's supportive of themselves and not denigrating. Self-deprecating humor is fine up until a point. Um, but it's just, Robin, you just got to pay attention and question it. I think that's like the core to it, which brings up, Galactic Ashley was also talking about empaths. So the Heyoka, they're like a super empath, and they are the Lakota tradition of a person who signs on to do everything opposite. So their clothes are inside out. They ride the horses backwards. When someone says I love you, they say I hate you, because they're all in there. Or like the one I would like to have been a part of is like a ceremony, and the Heyoka comes in and just starts hollering or screaming, and draws attention to themselves. And that's also called the sacred clown. I think we're experiencing that on a grand scale. And so that would be my question then, is, so the Heyoka is part of the spiritual bypassing as a tool for helping us recognize when spiritual bypassing is going on. Am I thinking right there? Okay, I'm getting a nod. Okay, good. I feel really smart then. Yeah, so questioning oneself and questioning everything, that's so 60s, question authority. But yeah, that's what we got to do, is to question it. And I think that's the way to figure out if somebody is spiritual. If Okay, I'm not going to say if somebody else is spiritual bypassing, because that's me being superior. See, this is just really, I'm trying not to get bogged down in it. Yeah, it is. Lorelai's going, yep, it is like that. So that's when I say I need to stop talking, because I'll just I don't mind going down the rabbit holes, but I don't like twisting it up. So
I just meant also, like, we can twist ourselves up in knots about it. That's kind of.
yeah. Well, I have the shirt that says, wait, let me overthink this. And I'm very happy to. It's just, I need to, I'll let someone else talk, but now thanks.
Lorelai, I feel like you have a list or something of signs. I feel like there's been a list of signs that have
Well,
been written down that are.
I certainly
Yeah.
I started drawing up a list. So yeah,
Let's
so
hear
let's see.
'em.
All right, and I'm Susie, some of your talking got me started. So some of these are going to be similar or the same. So anytime that there's like differences in hierarchy, I think of like idolizing and putting someone else above us, or thinking that we're above someone else. So I think that that's a place to go looking. And so outsourcing and thinking that other people have all the answers. So again, like as practitioners, we may have like an openness of allowing things to come through, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you can't. I think we all believe that like we're all so open, and that we've all just opened in different ways, and there might be certain ways that it's easier for us to open, and we're stand for everyone to open and to their gifts, I'll say, and to knowing. But so outsourcing and thinking the answer comes from somewhere else and not through you and your experience of you and your spirit in this body on this plane. Cults clearly are examples. So anyone that wants to get you to believe in like that other way and put someone else or something else above you. So, and there's subtle places where that happens in communities, where like a leader might want everyone to look up to them and give them special privileges, or just all kinds, or they don't face their shadow. They find convenient ways of making it seem like it's a situation or another person that had something not be what everyone wanted. Gaslighting. So anytime that someone, right, that's an extreme form, but right, turns something around and puts the blame somewhere else and doesn't own their part and doesn't look at their own shadow. So we talked about toxic shame, of whenever you're collapsing in with shame on yourself, chances are there's some version of like a spiritual bypassing type thing going on. And this is a more conventional language, not necessarily spirituality, but holding yourself to this high standard that's just like not reachable. Right? It's holding yourself down with some form of consciousness of like what it should be instead. One of the philosophies another one of my teacher uses is, if something happens 3 or more times, and this might be with other people, so with the same person, with the same types of situations with people, with yourself. So if something happens 3 or more times, it's an opportunity to go look and see how are you, how can you how do you have some opportunity of shifting what's happening? It's not that it's your fault and you want to blame yourself going backwards. It's there's some opportunity you have to shift how things are going forwards. So it might be like interacting with one person and have the same frustrating experience 3 or more times. Well, I don't interact with them the same way anymore. Maybe the feedback is to not interact with that person. Like there's an art, right? Of like, what is the thing to shift and change? But there's often something to face. So even just the belief of we can make it work, it'll get better, and we just go into it again and hitting our head on the same wall over and over, right? That's a form of spiritual bypassing. For me, anything that has me get out of my body, part of my gifts particularly being in my body. So like Galactic Ashley, I'm going to make up like your energy is much more flowing and connected. And so if you're not in that space that feels so good, right, to your whole system, that would be a way that you've taken yourself out somehow. I'm ironic, right? I'm in my body and not in my body. I got some paradoxes here. If I feel heavy sluggishness in my body, so for me, if I'm floating, I'm not in a good place and I'm somehow doing something, or if I'm too heavy, sluggish, all those kinds of things. So it's really for each I think it's all about how do we feel most alive? How do we feel energized? How do we feel energized by what we're doing so that we're not hyper and we're not manic and we're not. I think that various kinds of chemicals in the natural world and other things can help us be more connected and more open to all of who we are, and they can also take us away. It really depends on the context. Yeah. So I hope that was conceptual and practical enough of like what it can look like. And I say, and yeah, bliss bunny is one of the phrases, right? So being so joyous that we're not connected in our physical bodies and not connected to the context around us, right? So yeah, I think it's that dance on that board. So any plane, any continuum we look at, if we're not like able to be fluid in a dance on the board somehow, there's probably some way that we're bypassing in some form. Yeah. Galactic Ashley, do you have anything else you want to share?
Yeah, I just wanted to give another example, and I'm going to say this in terms of channeling. There's a lot of channelers who, and of course, you have to use discernment, right? And I'm not pointing fingers, but they blame their beings on well, the being said, I just say what I get. I don't know what I say when I'm channeling. So to me, that is, we have an ability to respond, aka responsibility. So while I might have my eyes closed, a lot of the information when I'm in public that is I'm channeling is not, it's rarely a surprise, because I'm connecting with these beings on a regular basis and we're having conversations, and you can be dang sure that I have lots of questions. um but my point is that to me is just another example. So and we're talking about spiritual bypassing, so it's like using our spirituality as an excuse. So I can just say whatever I want because the beings say it and I'm not really saying it, but it's coming out of my mouth. So I have to take responsibility for what comes out of me, regardless of quote unquote who is saying it, because it is coming out of my mouth and out of my body. And so I believe that the responsibility is needed in that way. And then this is not necessarily a thing, but this came up when Robin was talking, and this was another like, oh, like sort of like a duh. But we're like, I'm a healer, and I'm subscribing to do no harm, and then it's like, well, do no harm also includes yourself. So the first time that came in, I was like, oh, which is like a duh, right? But if you grew up where you had to prioritize, right, prioritize everybody else before you could get to yourself, then that might not really come in as like, oh, so you are allowed to prioritize yourself. But I think in one of the articles that Lorelei sent out, you can use your spiritual ascension as a way to just get out of relationships because that relationship no longer serves you. So from my experience with relationships, usually the universe is clearing them out for you, and you can try and hang on to them, and it's just it's gone, right? So it's like almost not even a decision, except it's just a decision. But I mean, I went through a divorce, and I had to, there's things that were there, but it was both of us, so I could see that. So these are all, it's not like the book and the cover and what's in the so we can't, it would be spiritual bypassing to give you a list to say this is spiritual bypassing, right? So I think it's like you're out in the weeds, and really I think everything comes down again to discernment, to connecting with yourself and your body. And the beings, I don't think I could be a channel if I didn't understand that my physical structure was crystalline, right? And that it was very much this is not how I refer to my body, but it's a communication device in a lot of ways. Like without it, I can't feel the vibrations. Without being present in my body, I can't, one, have a physical experience, or two, this is how I know who's coming through. I mean, we call it spirit charades. Like sometimes they'll identify themselves through like body movements and hand signals, right? So it's very much like in the body, right? So It's how we eat. Like, we're all wired in these beautiful different ways, and so it's sort of like, if there was a diet that worked for everyone, everybody would be on it. So sometimes I think of spirituality and like how diets are, like what sort of food plan or diet or whatever that you're on might not work for me. And now we're being asked to bring in all kinds of different elements and sort of apply them. But, how is it functioning? And we're in a human collective that is experiencing, and from the guidance that I have been getting, is going to become more and more polarized. And there is a purpose for that. But we're also in a universe that functions on polarities. But in order for us to go through and integrate, like, yeah, we all know about integration, but unifying things means that we have to really be able to identify what the energies are. So if you're like, I'm unifying masculine and feminine energies, but if you don't understand how masculinity and how femininity exists in your own physical structure, and you can't identify those feelings within you, then you're not going to be able to unify those. So unification is a really big step, but being able to integrate those and identify them and allow the masculine and feminine, this is just an example, to come up and have a conversation in your body and let them speak with each other so that they can begin their conversation of the eons that you have existed. Your cellular structure is holding all this memory, and allowing them to apologize to each other, to say sorry, and to allow that to have forgiveness within you. And I feel like this is happening individually within us. This is why we get to see. I love that there are people that are non-binary. I love that there are people that look uh, male, but they identify as female, because these things are going to look more complicated, even though they're not. Like, the boxes are disintegrating. And that's why we're all panicking, right? Like, there's no more, we can't, it's almost like there's no more Republican, there's no more Dem, like, things are just not what they appear to be. And we can't, humans like to put things in boxes. The thing is that the boxes are gone. So it's like those boxes are disintegrating. So I think that's where a lot of the panic and a lot of the anger is coming from, is because I don't know where to put this. So it's like we all have to come back into ourselves and then decide what it is we can do about it. And some of us are really here to lead a march, right? To like go, I'm leading the revolution. And some of us are here to help support people that are leading the revolution. Some of us are here, like, we're all participating in a way. You just have to understand, how are you participating? But we can't judge people who are maybe the dog sitters of the people that have been out protesting or marching every day, because that person wouldn't be able to leave if you didn't help them, or if you're not helping somebody deliver their groceries, right? So what you're able to do on a small level, and maybe quote unquote all that you did to help support Black Lives Matter movement was to bring in different books to your child. You have no idea what your child is going to do in the future, and maybe nothing. And so here's another thing about spiritual bypassing. If you're like, I want to live my soul purpose, what if your soul purpose is to move to Colorado on some random street because you need to be there for some time because somebody else? But sometimes we think that our soul purpose has to be this huge thing where we're on a stage or we're delivering like a sermon to the mount, and like it comes back and we can look and we can say that we did this thing. So it's like a gut check is, what if your part of your mission or your purpose is just to be on this quiet, sleepy street for a little while? Maybe that's not as cool. So it's just really tricky. I just think, like, being I forget her name right now, but she coined the term modern mystic. So a lot of us, we don't get to have these lifetimes where we're out in these Buddhist things. It's like you being the mother and working and raising your children, and also being a psychic, allowing your psychic senses and stuff to open up and evolve out into the world. That might, like, that is the modern mystic in many ways. It's not these like gurus that are up that can, I mean, they're important too, some, but the age of the guru is dead too, because we are the guru. So
But it's that fullness of experience that we all are sharing here. Everybody, you know, with my theater background, you had to have theater. They say no tech, no show. Well, you couldn't do it without actors either. You need a costumer, you need a lighting designer. Everybody's got a different purpose to serve. They've got a different purpose to fulfill. And so to think one aspect of this, like reading to your kid, you know, I could see there's like, oh, you're including you're advocating for literacy or whatever. I could make it a big, grand, glorious thing. But for you at that moment, you're reading to your kid. And that's one of those jobs because I'm totally with you on the whatever thing we can do to help support the growth of the planet now. That's what we're supposed to do. And it's okay. I don't think anyone is less than the other. There, I got excited about that. Okay, thanks.
Great. And Galactic Ashley, as you were saying about how all the different ways that we can be living our purpose, again, I'm not sure pronunciation, Mahana gave us a beautiful snore right there where Mahana is living their purpose in supporting this whole process. And it has to do with sleeping right now. Okay? And one of the other things you said, Galactic Ashley, that I love too is my own words for it is if we do a yuck, no, and like we push something away, repulsion, and it could be a part of ourselves or we're done with that boyfriend or we're done with that friend or blah, 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 any of that pushing away, it's usually where we're denying facing something in ourselves. I believe in no. There's clearly a place for no and boundaries and ending things. And if we do it with a blech, there's usually some way that we're not fully congruent with who we are. So again, it's not about being perfect. It's this right movable right board of fluidity. Like so, I've never surfed, so I don't know exactly embodied that this is true. But my experience when I'm balancing is that I have this like moving fluidity and that I'm responsive, right? So if I'm aiming for perfection in some way, I'm not as present, I'm not as capable. So in all of life. Yeah. Oh.
Yeah, trying with that focus on perfection, I think that that limits you. I think looking at the full spectrum of it. And so what was you, oh geez, I forgot. I
Okay.
lost my train of thought, but you were talking about you're fully present when you are trying to balance. And it's when you have that that laser-like focus on perfection that you miss out on so much of the experience around you. That was it.
You know, and the phrase that I said just right there, like it'll come back, that's a version of bypassing, right? So if I say it as it'll come back, I trust that if it wants to come through, it'll come back. So really that's more grounded for me. Like it might come back, it might not come back. And for me, it's when I'm how to say, if I judge that it wasn't right or that I'm doing something wrong and that's why it's not coming back, and that's harsh, that's bypassing. And if I just trust everything will show up when it's needed, that's a bypassing. And there's a way of being embodied, of not being hard on myself so that I can be open and fluid so the thought might actually arrive back. Right? Those are subtle.
So is there we have spiritual bypassing and we've been talking about that. What's the other side of that coin? What's the other phrase for that?
Oh, well, well, I know. So here, let me just go back to these phrases in Robert's book, Robert Masters, because he's probably got
Or
everything
like, what's
to say.
the opposite of it?
I think it's being with what is, right? So, I mean, his title, When Spirituality Disconnects Us from What Really Matters. And so it's being with what really matters. And what really matters to me is I am in a body, I'm on the earth,
Okay.
right? My spiritual being is here living through this body. Am I being lovingly connected with my shadow? Am I lovingly facing my shadow? Right? So am I facing my shadow without love? The love then might be the thing that I'm disconnected from. Right? So I think it's in every moment what is needed so that we can be in this responsive present place. So there's no perfection of when I'm not bypassing. It's what's needed in each moment and the willingness to see what that is, a willingness to discover it, a willing to let it appear, a willingness to dance with it. That's my answer. Yeah, I'm gonna go looking for his answer. He might say something that's his own version.
What was the author's name again?
Oh yeah, Shabbat. So Robert Augustus Masters, and I'll put him in the chat again too. And yeah, it's robertmasters.com. And
I
his
really like what Daniel just put in, spiritual bypassing versus spiritual aligning or spiritual cohering. Thank you so much, Daniel, for tossing that in. That
Yeah,
helps me a lot. Thank you.
yeah. Spiritual alignment, which is always shifting too, because our frequencies are always shifting, right? I do a lot of work with connecting people to their home frequency. So when you feel that, then you can quote unquote go up and down within your own frequencies, but there's always series of coherencies happening. Um, but that's not what I was going to say. What I was going to say is that one of the most I feel like going or having a metaphysical business or going into business for myself has been super, like, brings up all of the things to look at. So I don't know, in a way it's sort of like balancing for me, right, to have a business, because I remember when I took one of my first, like, business classes or whatever, and I knew what the answer was, but I also knew the answer that I wanted to choose, and I was like, oh, like, I know that that is the answer, but I know that that is what I want to pick. And the question was super simple. It was, do you think it's better to finish one item 100% or to finish 4 items 50%? And I'm like, dang it. And I knew that the answer was to finish 4 items at 50% and just allow that to be, and then to continue working on them. But I wanted to pick, you do the 100% and perfectly, and then you move on to the next thing, right? And so those are the things, right? So you definitely have to, like, sometimes you have to go and move. Like if Lorelai hadn't started in like 2019 or whatever, those fairs, they were good, right? And people thought they were great, and then they kept getting better, and then it was like she was ready for when 2020 happened, right? When 2020 happened, that's funny. But then they kept getting better, right? But like if she had waited to have that be perfect, well, you don't even know what you're getting them perfect for, right? So it's all really like arbitrary. And I am the first one to do all. I am an artist, and I like things to be done, and I like them to be a certain way. But it's also having a website and having things like you're constantly building and you're growing, so then they get better, and then there'll be pockets of time where you can work on something, and then things sort of keep improving. But perfection, if it is perfect, then it becomes stuck sometimes, right? Or then it's done and then you move on, like if you're thinking in terms of art even. So we're all in many ways works in progress, and I feel like if we ever thought we were perfect, well, then growth has stopped. So I like to think of being stable energy, like the best way to stabilize energy is in a three, because once you have like a three-legged table is able to sort of make adjustments with the flow of energy, where a four-legged table is almost too stable and too balanced that it has a propensity to become stuck. So I like the surfing analogy, but I tend to think of more like fun noodles, like in a pool, because it's more like you're having to constantly make adjustments. So you have an ability to respond. And because things are constantly always changing and shifting, the beings a lot of times like to talk about not getting into flow, but becoming the flow. So, and it might not sound different, but it feels different to me. So
It's great. There's some comments being shared in the chat that I love. So Donna shared that Native American artists create beaded articles. Always they make a mistake of at least one bead. Perfection to them is trying to be the perfection of the creator, which is not an acceptable goal. I also shared the example of I don't remember when they're from in time, but Thai ceramics that are painted. There's there are lines around the bowl, and then there's a fish inside, and the fish tail always flips outside the lines in some way. And for me, it's not a question of perfection. There may be a perfection lesson in there too, but it's more about like aliveness and not the tightness and not constraining and not perfect in that way. Not a mistake, but it's not what we expect. maybe. And then Susie shared, yeah, Turkish weavers do that with a purposeful error in their work. The thought is that only divine can make anything perfect. Yeah, so for me, there's something alive about all these things, and these are examples too of how I was doing, I was doing ceramic history, art history research at one point, where I was attempting to do a first layer of authenticating articles before they were sent off to the people that really would like, that cost money for the school, like to determine if things were authentic when they got donations. And for like the Thai bowls, one way you can tell that one of the bowls is not authentic is when the fish doesn't pop out of the edge, you know? So yeah, and the same thing with all these other types of art, right? That these are themes and practices in the culture, and you can see. Yeah. Yeah, these are all just great. So yeah, I love yeah, so aligning spirituality, I thought that was great too. And it's and alignment is always shifting and changing, right? We're always shifting and growing, and what's an alignment for us in one moment is not the same as what's an alignment in the next moment, because we change, the context changes. Yeah. Yeah, it's using all of us, right? All of us are instrument to see what's in tune. Great. Yeah. All right. Yeah, I don't think we have any more questions. If anyone has a question, we've got half an hour, so you could get a bunch of our time. And we knew this might be an unusual panel too, so yeah. Let's say, unlike last night when we had like, I don't remember exactly, like 20 questions and we did not get to all of them. That was wild. Yeah. Oh. Yeah, I appreciate people are sharing, appreciating the conversation. Yeah, that's great. Yeah. No, it's we're just going to be here for the next little bit, unless someone has a question. If someone has a question, we can make it a priority, and then we could, Galactic Ashley and Susie, if you're open to it, we could kind of just make this a community conversation right now. So if people want to open and kind of just informally ask questions, not about you personally, but like just more conceptual questions about this, or you want to share something and you're open to our feedback, that's fine. If you want to, people want to either share in the chat, or if you want to unmute and share, that's great. Just want to generally keep it kind of focused on spiritual bypassing or spiritual aligning. And yeah. Someone was asking how we're feeling about the next 6 months. We could attempt to answer that in the context of like what we've been discussing. Hmm.
I think that if we are in spiritual alignment and are all doing what we need to, like fulfilling that spiritual purpose we all have, so supporting where we can, how we can, at whatever level we can, the next 6 months will still present its challenges, but I don't think then, if we're all in alignment, that it will be so tumultuous. It was certainly holding up a mirror for us to examine our own thoughts and our own processes.
Well, and part of the trick is, right, we're only responsible for, right, this being. So you're saying like if we all are, and like there's only so much we can control.
Yeah, I trying to talk about fate and destiny. I mean, that's where we get into the quantum mechanics of it all, because somebody could turn left out of someplace and then just change the outcome. So I don't think it does us honor. It honors our our free will, our sovereignty. If anybody says, oh no, it's going to have to be this way, because it doesn't have to be this way. It's going to be, if we can do that, we're talking divine alignment here. If we can do this, then yeah, that will happen. But if this happens, then that's going to change the outcome. So looking to ourselves, seeing what we can do. I can light so many candles, I can put out so many honorable intentions, but that's what I can do. So it's, I'm going to sit here with my popcorn and watch and do my part. It's pretty much the way 6 months is going to go for me.
Yeah, so having a whole bunch of panels is part of doing our part to influence the next 6 months. And Susie's in a lot of these panels.
I feel like that statement, all I saw was popcorn. I'm like, okay. So thanks you, Lorelai, for reminding people Susie's not just sitting there doing nothing at home eating popcorn, watching the grand stage unfold.
Well, Galactic Ashley's on a lot of fit panels too. So, we are doing our part, and you're organizing them, and people are here. listening and gaining. So yeah, I'm not laying any bets right now.
And
Not
when you,
placing.
and so for all of you that are attending, when you come to one of these panels and you integrate something new, right? You start wondering about something, you might share it with someone else, just these questions you have about something, you might share something differently with someone. There are all these ways that what we do ripples and ripples and ripples. And the more that we each are being ourselves, this ripples and ripples. And again, the field of all of us, I think, is impactful. So having this connection of all of us together here, and there might be ways you connect with others of us in other places, right? So Galactic Ashley has a bunch of events too, and does events with other people that participate in these events, and other people like to bring and enlarge the field, right? And Susie does work in other places. And like, so all of us and each of us that are here, not just the three of us, right? All of us, right? All the conversations we have, right? And introducing each other to others, right? It's a way that we're influencing. But so the 6 months, I know, so I feel
Yeah,
scared and I tighten.
and I also feel that whole what we put out there, what energy are we putting out there? So again, that goes along with the alignment. But if you think it's all going to go downhill and out the floor, okay, then it just might, but not on my planet.
Yeah, I was saying, I know I don't know how things are going to go. My responsibility is to be as fluid and responsive as I can be. Like I just started to share, I feel tight. So then, okay, I need to breathe and I need to do practices that have me get more resourceful, more able to respond. Response able with a hyphen. um, yeah, and then having conversations with people. I have a friend that has very, very different perspectives than me, someone I love very much. We heard each other. Like I could take a second step and talk more deeply with her. Like that's an example of something that I might do. And it's one person. However, she's one person that's been involved for years and I has traveled around the world to participate in meetings. So she might be someone that really is influences others, right? So who do we know? But how can I do it in a way that's exploring and wondering and wanting to honor each other at the same time? And what can we find that's in common? What values do we share? Choices I make, connections I make, and not like choosing something that I push against either. And staying aware. For me, staying educated and aware. I have Scholar. I love learning and sharing information, and I have a colleague that has no Scholar, so her way is to talk with other people. So we all like do it in our own way.
Um, a lot of the information that I have been noticing that's been coming through during sessions and just coming through in my own conversations with the beings, I'm just going to just call them all the beings, is in one is that each of ours on an individual level, we are all, I don't like that phrase, but we are our belief systems are going to be challenged, and that's a lot, right? So a really basic belief system, which this is me considering something basic, is I never understand, which is me also, I have to like, wait a minute, slow down, when I'm just like, whoa, why can't people just let go of religion, like like, oh, so you learned something and now you no longer align with your religion. And then I realize, because that is a thread that then unravels their whole entire life and all of these other belief systems that were attached to that. So don't worry, I didn't get stuck in that very long, but I remember having this conversation like, I don't get it, you just let go of it. And it's like, oh, because you just lived the whole life where that was like your governing thing, right? So now what we're facing is all of these things that we previously aligned with. Some more information might come forward, but if you're not willing to look at the information, because we have to remember that it's okay to read something or to wonder about things, right? So it's like, how do you keep open-minded curiosity open during these like really emotional times? Well, you are allowed to have the emotional and to have the emotion and feel the anger, but also to see if you can like have points of being in balance, which I like to call the power of neutrality, which I've had a personal experience with. I didn't understand what neutrality meant. And so I asked the beings, I'm like, what does it mean to be neutral? Because it doesn't mean not to have feelings or not to like, because what does detachment mean? Sometimes we think it means, oh, we just don't care. We don't feel that. That's not at all what it means. They let me feel it. And I was in a very deep state with my channeling partner. And I was like, oh my, I want this. I felt the most powerful I have ever felt. And it was so balanced. And it wasn't that, it was like those, it's like you could allow these things to happen and not start throwing out emotional attachments to things. And it was the most amazing experience. So that wasn't that, I didn't just get that for the rest of my life, but I felt it, so I at least knew what it felt like. So my point of all of this is, for those of you that do, and this actually came up in like a reading for somebody, this person was very good at visioning. So those of you that feel that you have vision and you can see forward, they suggested to pretend, and this worked for, this is a masculine energy that this came in for, but also very like an empath. They suggested to imagine that you are looking at all of these timelines as probabilities, but that you are seeing them on screens, and that you are not attaching emotions to those, because you don't want to necessarily attach emotions to something that you perceive to be a negative outcome of a situation. But it's also good to know what might happen. So the moment that you feel yourself getting really emotional about this, to just take a step back and stop. Or allow kind of like this Zoom gallery thing. Like, I could look at all of these boxes as potentialities that are coming on, but I don't necessarily want to get super attached to them. I just want to enjoy the fact that I have this ability, and to watch it without emotional like attachment, because there are so many things. It's the human collective in many ways, of which we are all a part of, that is contributing to the outcomes of these different scenarios and situations. And I got this message the other day, and it was like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense. So if this doesn't make sense to you and you're just like, then just go ahead and throw it out. But it was the Aeon Collective, and their beings from another universe. And I've really been appreciating their perspective on things, because it's like so removed that it's like, it's just really interesting, right? They said one of the reasons why COVID needed to happen at a global level is because there needed to be a triggering event that actually created the human collective. So on a global stage, we had this human collective experience, and now we're literally in a human collective. We were before, but now we're experiencing it in a different way, because there had to be an event that really brought us as a globe, as humanity together, to have this sort of communal perspective. And that came in with a whole bunch of energy, and I was like, that makes sense. But with that, the light workers, just loose label, are like, oh my, it's happening, and it's happening really fast, and now it sort of feels out of control, right? So it like, we're on this timeline that we're now a part of the collective, and a part of like the tricky part of being a human and being here is that you're allowed to express your soul expression into the human collective, but also the human collective gets its power from the individual expression, right? So if you're living your authentic self and you're pumping that energy into the collective, that is amazing, because that means that somebody else, like, that you don't even know, can somehow benefit from that, right? So we're now really in this, but like, so it's like, how do you balance your singular experience with the collective experience? Sort of the best thing, one of the best ways to approach this is to not do the spiritual bypassing, right? Or to be aware of that, to have these conversations, and to really be transmuting stuff within you, because we are all like officially connected, and things are happening, and things are absolutely going to become more polarized. So this is not a negative downer on the next 6 months, but it's not going to all of a sudden get easy just because there's a new president in there or not. And so the other tricky part is, and this might be very unpopular, I have people that read QAnon and stuff, and we have conversations about it, but so my point is that there are a lot of truths that are sprinkled around. So it's not, I don't believe that we're going into a time where this outlet or this media or this thing is going to be giving us all the information. And I think this is going to be the trick of disclosure is going to be coming from us, and us being able to discern information from what's happening. And all I just keep getting is that it's not what it seems, but it's not like there's going to be some answer. So I could potentially see like some crazy thing happening, crazier than what's been happening, and then a whole bunch of disclosure coming forward where like information is released that maybe the government has been quote unquote hiding, and then that all gets shoved back under the rug because there's all this other stuff going on, so then nobody believes it, right? So there's all this disillusion, and mixed in that are truths, but no person necessarily can go out and say that. Like, you're the only one that can really choose what your truth is. And so these are like challenging times on an individual level, even if you decide not to watch the news or you want to just like block everything out, because it just is. And so it's really, it's all I ever end up saying is these are really interesting times. But like, it's what we're here for this reason, not like we are the saviors, but like we're here like for this reason, each of us, everybody here. And some of you might feel like lots of excitement in a way because it's like, the mission is starting. And like, I see people that are just like opening really quickly now, because for this moment, right? And so for those of you that judge yourself because I should have been doing this a long time ago, remember that oftentimes the most appreciated flower is the late bloomer because it is out when the snow starts to fall. So there's no, we're not on a road race. We're not winning anything. We're always on an ascension timeline, whether we're in this embodiment or some other, or on some other planet. And the beings will always come in and say that too. So polarizing things, and then a lot of personal growth and discernment on what's right for you and what's not.
Yeah, there's maybe one thing I want to say from earlier, say more completely. I spoke earlier about how science can be a real problem, like science isn't the neutral, objective thing that it's claimed to be in ways. I believe that that's true, and at the same time, I do see that science has a contribution. I do believe that there's the word truth. We have done weird things with the word truth and journalism. And I, at the same time, like, there's a reality that we are aware of at the moment, and that's our perspective of reality. It doesn't mean it's the only reality. And asking about the next 6 months, well, the idea that all sorts of pathways through are possible. The big thing for me here is paradox. So for me, part of being fluid and responsive is holding space for paradox. And I think one of our participants, who's also a practitioner, said that discernment is our full-time job. Yes, discernment, and that again is about the what's in alignment, what's in the most resonance with my energy, right? My spiritual energy, my physical energy, my emotional energy, like all of me, the totality of me, like what's in resonance and what's not, and how to discern that, and what do we do, and what are the impulses that flow from our wholeness, what are the reactions that flow from fear, and discerning those, and how do we get ourselves more in alignment as much as we're able to follow the impulses that are most authentic, most in alignment. And it's a journey, perfection.
Can I say something really quickly? Because somebody had mentioned something, Davey mentioned something about unconditional love, and I struggle with this because there is there is fear or pain there. So this is, and this also made me think of spiritual bypassing, because for me, anytime that I'm going through a period of consciousness expansion, or my vibration is getting higher, which obviously makes me cooler. I'm just kidding. Um, it means that lower vibrations within me cannot be there anymore. So what that always means to me is that means something is going to be unearthed from my subconscious. So the beings are constantly coming in and they're talking about the importance of the subconscious, because this is part of what we are constantly frequency matching. So if we're like, oh, I want to co-create this magical reality, we are sending conscious frequencies out, and we are sending subconscious frequencies out with that. And so those might be in direct opposition to each other. So as far as spiritual bypassing is concerned, now I'm asking the question, why does this even exist? Because in accordance of like the laws of vibration, when you are bringing in higher vibrations into your field, it means that that which doesn't match wouldn't be able to be there. But then if you have resistance to that, it just, I guess we're gonna make this thing. But to mention the unconditional love thing, because we are in Lorelai was talking about this with polarities, because we are in a universe that is created on positive and negative, on polarities, like, you know, within science, right? Protons and electrons, neutrons, right? Like this is what we are based on. So Davy, what you're experiencing is absolutely true, because the more love that we let into our physical structures, that means that we might simultaneously, and I've gone through this, and I went through this just a few months ago. It was just like, why am I feeling extreme sadness and longing, while at the same time feeling extreme amounts of love, right? Because then the beings came and they talked about it being a unification process, that you have to be able to hold both of these in you, in your physical body. So and so you have these simultaneous experiences. So and then you know, if you have when we identify what love is when we're younger, I call them set points. So they're set points that happen in our subconscious, because we might identify, oh, so I have to be less than who I am in order to be in a relationship, because this is what I'm seeing outside of me, and I'm only 7, and so I don't know. So that's what it means to be in a relationship. So that means that I take being less than, and I bring that into every relationship: my relationship with the earth, my relationship with my body, my relationship with my clothes, my relationship with money, my relationship with everything. Then that set point begins to define relationship, period, end of story. And so then we begin doing this work. So if there's fear or pain, and then when we're letting love in, we are re-experiencing from new levels of vibration and existences of what it means to let that in. So it will most certainly bring some of those things up. And then there are other points where you are experiencing these polarities at the same time in the physical body, and all I could say is it's interesting, like amazing, but not always fun when it's happening. But that we are always being challenged by what unconditional love is. And every time we go through a consciousness expansion, our ability to love expands. So it begins to push. So then we're like, oh, well, can I love that person? Can I shift my relationship with my mother, and can I love her differently, not because I have to, but because I can accept those parts of her, but then also don't have to necessarily believe that or feel her energy sort of in that way. Or the more healing that I do, there's less sticky stuff in me, and so the energy can just flow through me. So unconditional love is, I feel like, a staple in all of this, and what humanity is as a whole, and just individually what we're being pressured. It's not pressure, but it feels like pressure, is our boundaries of where we perceive that we could love are being expanded. And so that also means ourselves, and it gets, you know, tricky.
Yeah, thanks for noticing that comment and going back to it. I want to emphasize a comment I made earlier too, and I got 2 of my bears over here right now. I think it's important that we lean into our edges in ways that are friendly and easy for our system, that don't knock us so far off. It's lean in, notice that we're off, and come back into center, right? And lean into our edge and come back. Not center, but yeah, balanceable, fluid, response able, center. Yeah, that was beautiful, Galactic Ashley. And Susie, I want to just in terms of including like all the things that are here, do you want to see if there are any messages about any of this that want to come through you in any different way than they've come through already?
Hmm. Blessings. We are going straight to the source here. This is source. To be true to yourself, to be true to your spiritual path, whatever that may be, and it will change during your lifetimes. That is the essence of being a being on the planet, a being in body. The challenge for those in body is to rise above their upbringings, the social precepts that have been imposed on you. To find that place of unconditional love, as has been used here. It's also divine love, to accept your oneness with divinity, with the universe, is in you one sole purpose. We ask you to continue to discern. We ask you to continue to question and to trust the answers you hear from within. For within, from your higher self, it is all a part of the universe. We ask you to trust and to love and to believe in yourself more than anything. All of the guides are aspects of you. And when you understand that and integrate that wisdom, your interdimensional, your galactics, your dragons, your Mother Marys, all of these, they are all part of you. And when you recognize that you are divine and you have that amazing ability to be perfect in every moment without having to put a condition on it, that is your ultimate goal. So no matter what happens around you, it is part of your divine creation, your divine reality. For there are lessons there. So to integrate the wisdom from the lessons enhances your divinity, your connection with the universe. Recognize your connection, your oneness with the universe. And you need not worry about bypassing or being in alignment because you are the universe. And that is exactly what you need to be. Blessings. I don't know. Should I end in jazz hands now? I don't know. Um,
If your glasses go back on, then the
they
channeling begins.
do.
Throw them
Yeah,
off where the channeling begins.
I know. But there is one thing I want to bring up. Galactic Ashley made comment about, and I'm not taking it personally. This is me doing my processing. It's like those who say the guides, and I know in my channeling, I don't always remember what my guides tell me or what the guides say. So thanks to what has been said, I am asking my guides to allow me to still be a part of the session. I'm not necessarily in my body because divine energy, whatever aspect comes through, is going to take over. But to be okay with it's on me to be okay with listening in and not making a comment because that's what I do. So thank you, Galactic Ashley, for that. And then yeah,
Yeah,
I'm good.
but if I were one of your clients or people that came to you, and then I said, but you just said you would take responsibility for what you say, and that was
Oh,
the point of that. So, because some people don't, they're just like, I don't like
I
that.
have seen those situations happen. A client would do something because their channel told them, and I'm just over there going, no. But that just causes me to question how I approach things. So I don't always, no, I don't think I say that. But I do take responsibility. So it's not about me, but yeah, but feeling source come through is always so calming to me. And if each of you would allow yourself an opportunity to expand out into the universe so that you can be in touch and be aware of that feeling, like Galactic Ashley was talking about when she was channeling, and she got that one big experience of being one with everything. I think that's going to help us move forward and clear a lot of our old stuff away so we can step forward and do the big work, that the important stuff, and have that connection to shift our realities and shift the paradigm.
Yeah. And to be clear, so I've had the oneness experience, and I'm just like, that's fine. But what this was, I wanted to know what it felt like in the human brain to be totally neutral, to experience the power of neutrality. And so that was like that was why I was like, oh, that, like, I haven't had that experience as like walking around. So that was,
Neutrality?
yeah,
Wow.
it was the power of neutrality, and that was what I asked. I wanted to know what it felt like to have, because there's all this talk about killing the ego and all this stuff, and I was like, I want to know what neutral, like, what is it to have a neutral state of mind? What does that fit? And they just went, and I was like, holy, like, this is the most powerful I've ever felt. But it was very even. It wasn't like over anything. I wasn't arguing with anything, and I could see things, and I felt it in my entire body, and I was like, I want that. I want that. And so it was amazing. And I want to bring up really quick, Robin said, internally influenced versus how much we allow ourselves to be influenced by by outside events and others' emotions. I think that's amazing because the beings talk about, like, part of claiming sovereignty is the pathway towards freedom, and being free means living freely from the influence of others. So to me, that means asking those questions to yourself. Like, anytime we make a decision, who is influencing this decision, or am I making this decision, and why am I making this decision? And so I just think all
Yeah.
these, just constantly being in a conversation with ourselves without judgment, which is hard. So and anytime they say to call back your power, they always include and also give back any power that you've ever taken away from someone, consciously or unconsciously. So they always do both sides, and I love that, because we have to accept that we're not always being taken from. Sometimes we're doing the taking, and sometimes it's completely unconscious. So yeah, go Lorelai, to you.
Great. Well, we have gone through our 2.5 hours. Oh yeah, so I want to focus on some closing up too. Yeah, and I appreciate bringing up all these points. And yes, I and I and I, and like I ego, or I our wholeness. And yeah. Well, let's see. We have, I put the link in the chat for you if you're willing to fill out our feedback form and give us feedback on the event. And if you share your email address, we will enter you into a drawing for a free 30-minute session with one of the 3 of us of your choice. And you get a sense of who we are and how we engage from this. This was maybe a more physical plane panel than it is sometimes with Susie and Galactic Ashley. So thanks for including all and in making it embodied on this earth for everyone too. Let's see. We have lots of upcoming events. So our next panel is coming up next weekend on Friday, January 22. We have a panel on energetic and channeling divination, and that one will be sign language interpreted. And then, yeah, we just decided that. And then Sunday, January 24, we have our fair. We'll have about 16 practitioners, and there's space for new practitioners if they want to join. We can even go a little over 16. And then Wednesday, January 27, we have a panel on mediumship. That's our second mediumship panel, and we already have No, yes, the 27th already. From last night, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people signed up for readings there. We went through 9 last time. We might even be able to go a little quicker, and we're going to have 2 other mediums join that panel as well. And then on Saturday, January 30th, we have a panel on love, past, present, and future. That's going to be Kirsten and Heather and myself. We've done these awakening panels together in person in Portland for a long, long time. They're there from the beginning of the events, and so just the 3 of us, the way we used to do it, but online. Heather and Kirsten have not done any events online during this whole time, and so yeah, I'm really excited about that, doing that with them. We've been practicing meeting with each other, so all the technology is going to go smoothly. There's going to be another panel. I'm going to jump to Friday, February 12th, with a whole group of practitioners, A New Love for You, right before V-Day. And then going back a little bit, Saturday, February 6th, we've got a panel on releasing blockages from your body. So all kinds of great events coming up. And please do fill out that feedback form. You can win if you've won before. We make it available to you. And then often we have new practitioners on the panel, and so there might be someone new that gets your email address. And we just want to be able to share with you all that we're up to. And I appreciate you coming to all these events, all the different events that I run and that we all run and do and attend. And yeah, sharing our energy with the world, right? It's part of the impact that we make. So let's go through practitioners and I'll share again about who you are and what you do and how people can get in touch with you. And and there's specials. Let me say there are specials that we've been sharing too. So Galactic Ashley has a midnight special and 10% off the intensive. And Susie Goins has lower rates on doing sessions and maybe a shorter session. And I have shorter sessions available at lower rates too. So catch that from the chat and we may each say them as well. So yeah, Susie or Galactic Ashley, who wants to share about yourself on the way out?
I will go. I'm Galactic Ashley, and I channel divine guidance for star seeds, connecting them to their star families and galactic lineages. I use light language frequencies and work with your cosmic connections to facilitate high frequency healing transmissions and encoded activations. You can find me at galacticashley.com. And then also tomorrow, I don't think it conflicts with anything that Lorelai is doing because we actually try to schedule around all of your events because we actually like to be in your events too. But Susie and I are doing a channeling event from 4 to 6 p.m. Pacific, and we will also be doing an experience in that part where we will help connect you to your ideal self. And then I'll put the link in the chat right now, but it's if you went to Eventbrite or Facebook or my events page, it's around, or Susie's stuff.
Great. And just say, if you didn't already, say your website, say anything about your email or any of that stuff that you want for the video. So it's here in the video too if people watch it a year from now.
Okay, it's fine. galacticashley.com.
It's great.
So I'm Susie Parker Goins with Blue Lightning Healing. I'm a channel, and so divine comes through and talks to me in whatever aspect is most accessible to you. So my body mannerisms will change and the physicality changes, but you have a conversation. You can ask questions, gain insights into what you need to do. I'm also a Reiki master, so I do energy work. I can identify blockages in your body. And sometimes that's a past life connection. So I love looking at past lives and helping you resolve that. I have guided meditations on a podcast called Blue Lightning Healing Meditations, and that's on like Spotify and iTunes and about 8 other platforms. I have a website, bluelightninghealing.com. Best way to get a hold of me right now is my personal email at susypgoins@gmail.com. That's SUSYPGOINS@gmail.com. Yeah, and my discounts, my fare specials are $50 for 30 minutes and $90 for an hour. Just contact me and let me know you met me through the fair. I'm looking forward to this. This has been such an awesome time. And oh yeah, I'm doing something with Galactic Ashley tomorrow, talking about your ideal self, and it's on my website. And I'm so grateful for this opportunity to connect with everybody. And thank you, Lorelai, and thank you, everybody.
Thanks so much, Galactic Ashley and Susie. And, I just remembered too, so Thorn is actually going to be at 3 of these upcoming panels. So the ones that are going to be sign language interpreted, if you know anyone for whom this would be of service. So Friday, January 22, energetic and channeling divination. Saturday, February 6th, releasing blockages from the body. And Friday, February 12, new love for you. So all of those are going to be sign language interpreted. I'm Lorelei Shmayo. I'm an intuitive eye reader and a body psychology coach. You got like a great big dive into my body psychology coaching today. You can find out more about all the things I do at LorelaiShmayo.com. It's LaurelishImayo.com. And you can learn more about all that we do here at MeWe Fairs at MeWeFairs.com. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. I just felt everyone holding the space of what we were exploring today. Thank you so much. Thank you for being part of the energy field and rippling out all that we're growing and doing together. All right.